Drinking black tea calmly at Hogwarts. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 401 Cheats Flying in Hogwarts. Take it easy, young man. Slughorn said calmly while busy with the matter at hand. In the 1,000-year history of Hogwarts, there are many students who have received extra help. I'm not opposed to things like this happening. Each student has their own unique opportunity. But you have to remember that the wisdom of the past is only the wisdom of the past. Don't use the wisdom of the past to play tricks. What you have to do is absorb the wisdom of predecessors, and then surpass them. Unless, of course, you're getting that brand new copy that happily pranks at Hogwarts. In the end, Slughorn seemed to think of something happy, and couldn't help laughing. After pouring the process spore powder into a huge glass bottle, Harry helped his grandfather's glasses on the bridge of his nose, took a deep breath, and said, "Yes, Professor. In the old textbook I found notes written by the owner of the textbook, and I followed the above instructions in class." After Harry finished speaking, he breathed a sigh of relief. When he was following the instructions of the Half-Blood Prince recently, he had a feeling of deceiving Professor Slughorn in his heart. In class, he received as much praise as Zhang Su, but he knew that Zhang Su was relying on his real strength, while he was playing tricks. Few people know that the old bookshelves in every classroom are actually a huge treasure trove. Slughorn sat on the chair behind the podium after finishing the work in hand, and then motioned Harry to find a place to sit down. When Harry sat down behind the front desk, Slughorn was about to give a lecture when the classroom door was pushed open. "Professor, there's news from the Centaur tribe," Zhang Su said happily as he entered. "Let's go to the Forbidden Forest tomorrow." Then Zhang Su looked at the situation in front of him, and after a moment he said, "Am I bothering you?" "No," Slughorn said with a smile. "I'm going to teach Harry some little knowledge about Hogwarts, so you should come and listen." After Zhang Su sat next to Harry, Slughorn cleared his throat and said, "Since the four great wizards of Slytherin, Gryffindor, Ravenclaw and Hufflepuff founded Hogwarts, they leave behind a legacy that empowers students. From the very beginning, the students of Hogwarts knew about it, and many outstanding students also learned that they left their valuable knowledge in various forms. Later, with the passage of time, the inheritance of the four founders became a secret legend, and outstanding students left their own knowledge, which became a tradition that was passed down secretly." It was Zhang Su who saw Harry adjusting his glasses. Zhang Su heard about this matter from Lao Deng when he proposed to Dumbledore to make Grandpa Gandalf's glasses, and he also encountered such a thing. "The four founders have all left their own inheritance?" Harry asked in surprise, and Grandpa Gandalf didn't tell him about this. Slughorn didn't answer, but smiled and looked at Zhang Su with "I've seen through you." After Harry noticed Slughorn's gaze, he also looked at Zhang Su in surprise. But Zhang Su shook his head with a wry smile, and said, "It's a pity that I didn't get Ms. Ravenclaw's approval." "Really, what a pity," said Slughorn. "It is said that the Ravenclaw inheritance the number of people is the largest." "I got their help." Zhang Su pointed to the old bookshelf in the classroom. Slughorn nodded. He looked at the bookshelf in his free time, and saw Zhang Su's handwriting on some books with notes. But Ron was unlucky that day and got a blank textbook. "What about the heritage of other houses?" Harry asked excitedly. And Slughorn spread his hands and said, "This is all the secrets of his own house. And the only thing leaked out is that Slytherin house has passed 100 years and no one has been able to find their own inheritance." After Slughorn finished speaking, a regretful expression appeared on his face. After all, he used to be the head of Slytherin. Zhang Su didn't speak at this time, and now his motto is "Make a fortune in silence." "Maybe only wizards of Slytherin blood can find it?" Harry asked. Then Harry stopped talking, and when Dumbledore gave him a lesson, he knew that there was only one two-hole socket left for wizards of Slytherin blood. Slughorn also knew the inside story, and the expression on his face became strange. Slughorn quickly adjusted his emotions, and continued, "In addition to the four founders, there are many outstanding students who have left their knowledge in the castle. For example, the notebook you left behind, Professor," Zhang Su said with a smile. Slughorn was now becoming proud. As if he had been elected Minister for Magic, he said, "Mr. Zhang's insights are also very inspiring." Harry, on the other hand, was stunned to watch the academic exchanges between the two of them. But he hadn't heard where Slughorn's notebook was after listening for several minutes. After a burst of laughter, Zhang Su and Slughorn stopped their academic exchanges. It's a pity that Lily didn't keep her textbooks for various reasons, otherwise, Slughorn said with a sigh. Then he went on to say, since you have received the help of one of the seniors, then you must study hard. Such opportunities are rare. Yes, Professor. Harry nodded in agreement. If you have any questions, you can ask me. When Slughorn said this, his face showed an expression of thinking about the past, as if he saw the student who had the same eyes as Harry back then. Questioning myself. Not long after, Slughorn stepped off the podium, and the matter was closed. Slughorn walked up to Zhang Su and asked excitedly, the Centaur tribe found it. Zhang Su nodded and replied, yes, it's time for them to mature. In spring, they will start spreading seeds and there will be no way to pick them. Then Zhang Su took out a piece of parchment, and after unfolding it was a rough map of the entire Forbidden Forest, on which several circles were drawn in different places. Then let's go together tomorrow. Slughorn pointed to the nearest circle at Hogwarts and said, Harry, you will also go tomorrow, which is one of the contents of confinement. Harry didn't know what the two of them were going to do in the Forbidden Forest, but since it was related to the Centaur tribe, it wasn't anything dangerous. Chapter 402 Going to the Forbidden Forest to catch sheep. There was a sudden heavy snow last night, and when the moon and snow stopped, the snow could not reach people's calves. When Zhang Su, Harry, and Slughorn walked into the Forbidden Forest, they couldn't help feeling embarrassed when they saw the snow on the ground. The snow covered the ground of the Forbidden Forest, and the paths, ravines, tree roots and vines on the ground were all invisible, and it was easy to fall if you walked on it. In this case, even the horse people are too lazy to go out in this way. It is more convenient for Zhang Su and the others, and it can make their actions less variable. As for the dangerous ground, they can fly. I have to say that the Weasley family's flying car that settled in the Forbidden Forest is now about to evolve into the Kid and Knight Rider after the Weasley twins overhauled it once before graduation. It is now rampant and has become a rampant bully in the Forbidden Forest. Even the horsemen have to avoid it when they see it. But Harry knew how to control the car, so after they found the car covered in snow, they saved themselves from the trouble of trekking in the snow. As for cars, Slughorn was in a daze. Harry had sat in the back seat of the Dursleys' car, and Zhang Su had driven the car last time in his previous life. In this case, Zhang Su could only bite the bullet and drive. Fortunately, Mr. Weasley did not remove the seatbelt of the car, otherwise Zhang Su would not have dared to drive around in the Forbidden Forest. Slughorn, who sat in the front passenger seat just out of curiosity, his round belly was strangled as he learned to put on his seatbelt, so after less than 10 minutes of driving, Harry sat in the passenger seat. What are we going to find? Harry asked, holding a map to guide the way. While driving intently to avoid hitting a tree, Zhang Su replied, we're going to find native sheep. The tree that bears the exact same fruit as a sheep, Harry asked. That's right. Zhang Su replied, Slughorn needs a part of this plant. I need the juice from the fruit, said Slughorn, sitting in the back seat, that is, the blood of the sheep. What's the use of its juice? Harry asked curiously. It is a drug catalyst with a wide range of uses. Zhang Su replied, it takes several hours or even half a day for some drugs to fully exert their effects after taking them. If you add it to the drug, it can make the drug takes full effect within minutes or even seconds. Then it would be the best to use him as an antidote. Harry suddenly said excitedly. Yes, it can make some drugs that are not suitable as antidotes because they take effect too slowly can be used again. Slughorn said to Harry, it's just that the research on it has just started. You are willing to come work on it with me, Harry, and I can make you second author on the paper. Let me think about it, replied Harry, who was still a little resistant to potions now. Don't think about it. Zhang Su said, aren't you going to be an Auror in the future? As an Auror, you must deal with poisons and antidotes. You can use this opportunity to strengthen your knowledge in this area. Hearing that doing so would be useful for becoming an Auror, Harry agreed after thinking about it for a while. Slughorn told the handyman who had just been fooled that he would contact him as soon as the research began. Then he wanted to trick Zhang Su into joining the handyman team, but Zhang Su he passed him by. Professor, how did you know that the juice of native sheep fruit has this effect? Zhang Su asked curiously, because there had never been any research in this area before, and what Zhang Su said to Harry just now was from the previous Slughorn had told him in his show of knowledge. A few years ago, an old friend of mine got sick and asked me to help make a potion, Slughorn said. After you drink the potion before going to bed, you will be healed as soon as you sleep until noon the next day. An NBSP, it's just that my friend ate half-ripe lamb chops fried with native sheep's fruit that day before going to bed after drinking the medicine. As a result, when he changed his pajamas after drinking the medicine, he found that his illness was after changing his pajamas. It'll be fine. In the ensuing conversation, Zhang Su discovered that Slughorn seemed to be making friends with Harry deliberately, and kept showing Harry his personal connections in the chat, but Harry was not sensitive at all in this regard. The group talked and laughed, but they all deliberately avoided a question, that is, what would happen if the juice of this fruit was used in poison? According to the written description on the map provided by the horsemen, the native sheep closest to them grew on the bank of a stream, and about a mile upstream of the stream was a small waterfall 2 to 3 meters high. The car stopped at the bottom of the waterfall, and the 3 people in the car got out of the car to exercise their muscles and bones. Since the maps provided by the horsemen belong to the Impressionist style, they do not have the concept of scale, so the group can only find reference objects such as rivers, streams, and pools on the drawings, and then walk along the water flow. Coupled with the heavy snow cover today, if the car is flying above the height of the treetops, it will be easy to get lost. Therefore, the car has been flying at a slightly higher ground along the way. In order not to hit the tree, Zhang Su's speed has not been high. In this way, the car turns left and right for a while, and the people in the car can't stand it. After getting out of the car and moving his stiff body, Harry asked, "Why did we stop so far from the target?" Slughorn replied, shaking his stiff legs, "The native sheep's fruit is ripe now, and it will leave as soon as the weather warms up. The car is too noisy, and it will tear the fruit. It was scared away in advance, so we will have to work hard to catch it." "There is a situation," Zhang Su, who was standing aside, suddenly shouted. Startled, Harry and Slughorn immediately drew out their wands, and then looked at Zhang Su, who was twitching his nose and inhaling continuously. "The wind brings some flavor." Zhang Su pointed to the downstream direction of the wind and said, "The smell of roast lamb seems to have cumin." The other 2 were taken aback. They didn't smell anything, but Zhang Su didn't look like he was joking. After thinking of Zhang Su's small and practical magic, they no longer suspected that Zhang Su made a mistake, and then they immediately thought someone got there first. "Let's go and have a look first," Slughorn said a little angrily. "Everyone hold your wands." He has nothing to say if something that he thought was in his pocket was taken away without his knowledge, but if someone roasts it in front of him first, it would be irritating. The 3 of them walked quietly downstream along the frozen stream, and as they approached their goal, Harry and Slughorn began to smell the scent of mutton in the air. When they came to the edge of a clearing, they saw a blond man in strangely colored clothes roasting a leg of lamb beside a bonfire in the middle of the clearing. The strange color of the clothes is Slughorn's feeling, and Harry remembers seeing soldiers on TV wearing such clothes called snow camouflage clothes when he was at No. Privet Drive. And Zhang Su grabbed Harry and Slughorn, who were about to go up to say hello, and then shouted to the person who was roasting the leg of lamb, "Belle, this is my professor and classmate. Call your 2 friends, come out, we mean no harm." Bear Grylls, who was roasting the leg of lamb, breathed a sigh of relief, and then shouted to the surrounding space, "Everyone, come out, they are professors and students of Hogwarts." As soon as Belle finished speaking, 2 people appeared from the snow on both sides of Zhang Su and the others. If the 3 of Zhang Su took a few steps forward, they would fall into the opponent's triangle ambush circle. Zhang Su saw that the 2 people who were ambushing just now took off their hats and hoods, and found that they were acquaintances who had met once when they acted together last time, so he greeted them, "Long time no see, Simon, Kevin." Chapter 403, Delicious Roast Leg of Lamb. As an old wizard among wizards, Slughorn quickly discovered that Belle, Simon and Kevin were different from other wizards. "Who are you?" Slughorn, who realized that the other party's identity was wrong, took 2 steps forward with his short legs and stood between Harry and Zhang Su, vaguely protecting Harry by his side. While guarding against Bear Grylls and the others, they are also guarding against Zhang Su. For a moment, Slughorn thought it was a trap set by Zhang Su. He himself had been hiding from Voldemort for a long time before he was hired back to teach at Hogwarts, and Harry beside him was the one who wanted to get rid of Voldemort quickly. Now they encountered a few wizards with suspicious identities in a place far away from Hogwarts and away from the crowd, which made him nervous. Belle took out a roll of parchment and threw it to Slughorn, and replied, "We are Mr. Dumbledore's guests." Slughorn dubiously used his wand to levitate the parchment and then unfolded it. He first checked that there were no curses on the parchment before he began to read the contents. The curious Harry also stretched his head to look at the parchment, and he saw the familiar writing on it, which said that the person holding the parchment was a guest invited by Dumbledore to travel to the Forbidden Forest. After repeatedly confirming that the last string of Dumbledore's signatures on the parchment was not fake, Slughorn was relieved. When Slughorn rewound the parchment, he found that Zhang Su had already sat in front of the campfire and was studying the roast leg of lamb. Zhang Su didn't take the dagger that Belle handed over, but cut off a thin slice from the roasted leg of lamb with a Wu Ying Shen Fang table knife. Zhang Su's move won the applause of Belle and the three of them. Yui Zhang Su, who had finished eating the sliced meat, praised it sincerely. When you first bite down, your teeth feel the tenderness of the meat, but when you bite off the meat, you can feel the crispness of the fruit. In addition to the taste of mutton, the taste buds also faintly sensed a hint of sweetness from plants. When Harry and Slughorn walked to Zhang Su's side, what they saw was Zhang Su's face that seemed to be deeply intoxicated after taking drugs. At this time, Belle handed Slughorn a marching pot beside him, and said, "Professor, Mr. Zhang said you need this, so you can take it." Slughorn took the marching pot and opened it to find that it was filled with a bright red liquid, which was the juice of the native gold fruit they were targeting on this trip. Slughorn said to Belle, "Thank you, sir." Then he took out a thumb-sized crystal bottle and handed it to Belle, saying, "As a thank you, please accept this bottle of my special white fresh essence, which has special effects on wound healing." Belle thanked Slughorn and accepted the gift from the other party. Then Slughorn pulled Harry, who was staring at the roast leg of lamb eager to try, and began to fill the juice from the marching pot into the crystal bottle he had prepared earlier. After the teacher and the student filled the pot of juice without any drop, Zhang Su handed 2 plates of sliced roast leg of lamb to them. "Let's have lunch first and then go to the next place," Zhang Su said to the two of them. Slughorn thought for a moment before nodding in agreement. Since the other party has Dumbledore's endorsement and seems to be familiar with Zhang Su, he can be trusted. Several people who sat around the campfire and had a delicious lunch reported their names under Zhang Su's gossip. As a result, the famous Harry Potter aroused great curiosity of the Wilderness royal family. Next, Harry chatted with Simon and Kevin, and Slughorn approached Belle, who was sitting next to him, and Zhang took the opportunity to eat more while they were chatting. "Mr. Griles, what do you do?" Slughorn asked. He was a little confused about the other person's background. "I'm a member of the Royal Airborne Special Service," Belle replied. Slughorn stared at Belle with wide-eyed eyes, then turned his head to look at Simon and Kevin who were chatting with Harry, and finally took a look at Zhang Su who was eating hard. He realized that the world was changing a bit fast. "You are traitors!" Slughorn exclaimed in surprise. Slughorn's shout alarmed Harry and the three of them. Harry looked at him suspiciously, unable to understand what the professor meant, and Simon and Kevin looked at Slughorn with a different look. "Ought to get sick of it." "We have not betrayed anyone," Belle said solemnly. "We live on this land, we defend this land and the people who live on this land, instead of hiding and doing nothing. You have betrayed the international statute of secrecy promulgated by the International Confederation of Wizards," Slughorn said. "The times have changed," Belle said. "If you hide yourself, you won't be able to see the development of the times. What awaits the wizard is a constant backwardness in self-enclosure, and what comes eventually is demise. At that time, you may only be able to live under Mr. Zhang's rule. Your Ministry of Magic has no way to prevent them from breaking into the manor of British wizards on British soil and taking away British wizards, even if there is magic protection set up by the mysterious man himself in that manor. Then the Ministry of Magic will not be able to stop them from doing more in the future." Zhang Su, who was picking his teeth, looked confused, wondering why he was shot while lying down. "We have always advocated mutual respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity, mutual non-aggression, non-interference in each other's internal affairs, equality and mutual benefit, and peaceful coexistence," Zhang Su said immediately. "However, the premise is that the government agrees to your demands." Belle turned his head and said to Zhang Su, "Our demands are not excessive, and those demands are based on the 5 principles of peaceful coexistence." Zhang Su learned something during the Christmas holiday, so he has the confidence to say so. "Those excessive demands were made by the French and Russians," Zhang Su added. "I think we should be going to the next place." Seeing that the atmosphere was starting to turn wrong, Harry hastily changed the subject. "Harry, you and the professor wait for me in the car first, I'll be here soon," Zhang Su said to Harry. Knowing the identity of the other party, Slughorn immediately stood up and turned to leave. Harry hesitated, bid farewell to Belle and the others, and then left. When the two of them left, Zhang Su and Belle stared at each other, but no one spoke. After Harry and the others disappeared into the depths of the woods, Belle said to Zhang Su with his right hand, "I hope the decisions of the officials sitting in the office will not affect our friendship." "I believe nothing will happen to affect our friendship." Zhang Su and Belle shook hands and said, "Regardless of whether the two parties are true or false, now is not the time for the two sides to turn their faces. Therefore, in the impression of ordinary people, officials who always sit in the office and give orders blindly are the best step." After descending the steps, Zhang Su asked, "Have you ever met a horseman?" "I met them once, and their attitude was very bad, but after reading the written certificate issued by Mr. Dumbledore, they no longer stopped us." Belle replied, "To be honest, the horse people are a bit glass-minded, and they will be furious at the slightest thing they think is offensive to them. When I communicate with them, I always think carefully before speaking." Zhang Su said, "Then let's avoid them." Belle said, "That meeting almost caused trouble. Don't get too close to the horse people tribe, in fact their life is not easy." Zhang Su said, "Also, don't go any further after you get to the place where the electronic equipment is disturbed. Now there are a lot of defensive magic around Hogwarts." After reminding them of some precautions in the Forbidden Forest, Zhang Su also turned and left. Chapter 404. When Zhang Su, Harry, and Slughorn finished collecting all the materials marked on the map and returned to Hogwarts from the Forbidden Forest, it was time for dinner. Ever since we parted ways with Belle and his party, the atmosphere in the car has not been right. Slughorn has a gloomy face and said nothing, Zhang Su has been thinking about something, and Harry can only sit there quietly holding a map to guide the way. After returning to the castle, Slughorn went directly upstairs, Harry went to the cafeteria to find his friends, and Zhang Su turned to the cafeteria to deal with today's spoils. Slughorn only wanted the blood of the native sheep, while Zhang Su took the rest of the whole sheep. After eating 2 sandwiches from the house-elves, Zhang Su began to study the 4 sheep on the ground. Since it is a mature fruit, it means that it can be planted, and then it will take root, grow vigorously, bloom and bear fruit. At the beginning, Zhang Su didn't expect the meat of native sheep to be so delicious. So when he was in the Forbidden Forest, he had been thinking about whether he could expand and standardize the cultivation of native sheep. Now the structure of the herbal medicine planting industry in my hometown is beginning to age. Except for some special medicinal materials, some common medicinal materials have not made much profit under the fierce competition in the market. Now the village urgently needs new varieties to adjust the industrial structure. Period. The basilisk breeding industry is Zhang Su's own industry, and he has no intention of handing it over to the clan. The resorts in the villages are now part of the poverty alleviation project that promotes the development of the surrounding areas. With the help and guidance of the government, the resorts have promoted the construction of green food in the surrounding mountainous countryside. This also makes most of the profits of the entire resort flow to the surrounding villages, and the village's year-end dividends are at a level that can make everyone happy. In his previous life, Zhang Su once heard a buddy from Shandong in the university dormitory mention that in the 80s, his family used 8 seeds to introduce American ginseng and became the first area in the country where the trial planting was successful in the first 2 years of his crossing. The income of American ginseng there was 92 yuan per mu before the next month. In October, when American ginseng was harvested every year, he could receive several caddies of American ginseng from his buddies. So in the past 2 years, Zhang Su has been looking for economically valuable herbs that can be grown in his hometown in Europe, and if there are suitable ones, he will introduce them for trial planting. Although Professor Sprout, who was invited after dinner, didn't quite understand Zhang Su's practice of trying to get money back and plant it, she still readily agreed to help Zhang Su conduct research on large-scale cultivation of native sheep. Of course, all expenses are paid by Zhang Su, and all the final scientific research results are also exclusive to him. After discussing the cooperation matters and initially signing the Memorandum of Cooperation, Professor Sprout and Zhang Su began to study the fruits of native sheep. As a fruit with a function of spreading seeds, it naturally has seeds inside. The first step tonight is to dissect these sheep-like fruits and find the seeds inside. When cotton is mature, in addition to cellulose, there are also a small amount of fatty waxy substances, nitrogenous substances and pectin, which can prevent cotton from absorbing rain and dew, and these sheep-like fruits are similar, The wool on the outside also contains a lot of fatty substances for waterproofing. It looks and feels greasy like Snape's hair. As a plant, the native sheep fruit has no internal organs except for the bones, and it is full of soft meat after being cut open. After some skinning and shaving, Zhang Su and Professor Sprout found that the sheep's spine was its seed. When Harry's trio approached at 10 o'clock in the evening, Professor Sprout had already left with 4 goat-like seeds, while Zhang Su was there to process the remaining mutton. Ron and Hermione, who saw these for the first time, felt incredible from time to time touching the greasy fur, and from time to time they used their wands to poke the flesh that was no different from mutton. I can't believe this is the fruit of a plant. Hermione sighed. Although I have seen its introduction and pictures in books, the real thing is still the first see you once. I thought Harry was joking. Ron said, looking at the lamb body that had been split in half with no internal organs in the middle. How does it taste? As soon as Ron's words fell, Zhang Chu took a steaming hot pot and put it on the table beside him. Luna came over after placing the seasoning dish and took away the sliced meat that Zhang Su had just cut. If you want to know the taste, prepare the bowls and chopsticks yourself. Zhang Su said to Ron angrily. This guy just asked Zhang Chu how it tasted after he saw Zhang Chu preparing the bottom of the pot. Zhang Zudong picked up a sheep and put it away, and then said to the students in the kitchen who were already staring at him, if you want to eat, do it yourself. A group of students who couldn't wait for a long time started to act as if they heard the firing of the starting gun. Watching a group of people start to divide the mutton and light the stove, Zhang Su said to Neville, who was preparing the barbecue skewers, remember to give me 2 skewers when it's done roasting, or I'll stew your life. When Zhang Su returned to his seat, the bottom of the soup in the copper pot was already boiling. Sliced shallots, sliced ginger, sliced sunshine mushrooms and sliced walking mushrooms were rolling up and down in the pot with the boiling bubbles. Just when Zhang Su and the others were about to start eating, the kitchen suddenly became quiet. The door of the kitchen was opened, and Dumbledore brought Professor McGonagall, Professor Flitwick, Professor Sprout, and the 4 deans of Neep, Slughorn, Sinista, Trelawney, and all the living professors of Hogwarts rushed in. When the students were in a daze, Dumbledore walked to the mutton table, held the last whole sheep in both hands, and asked the students around him, "We take a sheep, don't you mind?" The students around didn't dare to say they minded, so Dumbledore took it as their acquiescence. He smiled and said to the students around him, "Thank you, I wish you all a happy meal." Then he left with a sheep. Then Dumbledore and the professors set up a long table away from the students, and set about doing it themselves. Zhang Su looked at Hagrid, who was cutting up the mutton. It seemed that if the professors wanted to eat more tonight, they had to use their real skills. Due to the presence of the professors, the students couldn't get excited, and everyone's voice was much lower when everyone was eating. They finally knew why Professor Dumbledore brought all the living professors to grab the sheep. Because this lamb is so delicious. Soon, there was no voice in the entire kitchen. Both the professor and the students were busy grabbing the meat. Even Neville ignored Zhang Su's threat of stewing Lifu, and he didn't even give half of the grilled meat skewers to him. Zhang Su sent them over, and the Harry trio who originally had business with Zhang Su also planned to wait until they were full. From the moment the first piece of meat jumped out of the plate and ran into Professor Flitwick's plate, the professor's table became a performance venue for silent spells and wandless spellcasting. Suddenly, 2 palm-height villains wearing armor commonly seen in the corridors of Hogwarts appeared on the dining table. They walked to the plate and forked a piece of meat with their swords in their hands, then turned around and ran towards Dumbledore's plate. Slughorn produced a crystal vial, and after popping a tiny drop of Felix elixir into his own mouth, he always got the best part. Snape quietly cast a confusion charm on the plate of meat in front of him, so that the professors next to him could not feel its existence. At some point, when Professor McGonagall was forking meat into the plate, the fork in her hand suddenly became several times larger. Just as the professors were showing their talents, several professors expressed calmness. Hagrid thought about going to the Forbidden Forest by himself tomorrow. Professor Sprout secretly made up her mind that after the native sheep were successfully planted, she must keep one of them and eat enough for herself. As for Scarlet, if the meat hidden by Zhang Su is less than half a sheep, her name will be written upside down. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 405 Old Deng, just go back and take the college entrance examination. It was late at night, and most of the professors and students in the kitchen left after eating and drinking. Luna rubbed her stuffed belly, and said to Zhang Su, "It's all your fault, my belly is getting bigger." Dish. Period. Zhang Su knocked on the head in a routine way, knocking Luna into a defensive state with her head clasped. Semicolon, U-degree pan-degree. Then Zhang Chu, who was sitting on the other side of Zhang Su, avenged Luna with his fist. "I feel fat, so I get up early every morning and go for a morning run by the lake." Zhang Su said to Luna, "I didn't see you slow down when you were scrambling to eat just now." "No way, it's better than the colorful ballfish," Luna said. Zhang Su was speechless, and then drove her back to bed early. After letting Luna and Zhang Chu go back to the dormitory to rest early, Zhang Su took the hawthorn tea that Dobby handed over, and said to Harry, who hadn't left yet, "If you have anything to say, just say it." Harry organized his words, and then said, "About what Belle said today, is what he said true?" Zhang Su took a sip of hawthorn tea, then sighed and said, "This is something that the gentlemen in No. Downing Street are in charge of. It's too early for you to care about these things." "Who is Belle?" Ron asked suddenly. Zhang Su looked at Harry suspiciously, and Harry said, "I didn't tell Ron and Hermione about that." "Feelings, you brought the two of them to eat meat," Zhang Su sighed in his heart. "Bear Grylls, he is a soldier of the British Army. We met them in the Forbidden Forest today." Zhang Su explained to Ron, "We have cooperated before." Then Zhang Su briefly told Ron some details about a multi-party cooperation to take down a Death Eater den last year. Harry had heard Lupin and Black talk about it, but Ron and Hermione knew next to nothing about it. Ron didn't respond to this matter, but Hermione reacted immediately, and then looked at Zhang Su with wide eyes. She was the one who felt the most incredible about the fact that there were wizards in the British Army. Just as Hermione wanted to ask about this matter, Harry asked, "Then he said that a manor was attacked and a wizard was taken away." Zhang Su put the teacup in his hand on the table, and then said, "This is a long story. You should remember that a bridge collapsed last summer, and a bus full of students fell into the river." Hermione was the first to nod. This incident had a great impact on Muggle society. She had read about it in the newspaper. Zhang Su went on to say, "There were students from several countries in the car, and all these countries demanded that the British government severely punish the murderer. Later, the British government found Rodolphe Lestrange and several other Death Eaters on nearby cameras. There were no traces, so it was judged that they did it. It was only later that these Death Eaters hid in Malfoy's house, which made the arrests of the British government and the Ministry of Magic all in vain." "Then Malfoy's house burned down," said Ron. "Yes, because the countries where the victims were located decided to unite and do it themselves," Zhang Su said. "Harry and the others are still young and don't know what such an action means to the British government." Zhang Su later learned that this blatant challenge to British sovereignty made the British government very annoyed and passive. "How did they break the protective magic at Malfoy Manor?" Harry asked. "It took the Order of the Phoenix a long time to find it." "Do you know the reason why Hogwarts cannot use electronic products?" Zhang Su said, "If you think about it in reverse, you can find some simple and crude cracking methods such as high-power electromagnetic pulse devices." The Electro-Harry trio said they didn't know the word. And Zhang Su also shrugged, saying that this explanation is too troublesome, so I don't bother to explain it to you. "And then?" Harry asked after dropping the awkward word. "Then several Death Eaters including Rodolphe Lestrange were taken away, and then a wizard from Russia set fire to Malfoy's house." Zhang Su said, "Afterwards, the result negotiations, after the British government agreed to some small conditions from the governments of several other countries, those Death Eaters were handed over to the relevant British departments." "What's the condition?" Harry asked curiously. "No comment," Zhang Su replied. Although Zhang Su has read the briefing on this matter from relevant domestic departments, he still cannot speak out about these matters. The condition put forward by the country is only to require that the British intelligence agencies no longer support certain people to do things in the future, otherwise there is no guarantee that certain people will support wizard groups such as Death Eaters without authorization. "Then the British atomic bomb is also guarded by army wizards?" Hermione asked suddenly. "It's inevitable at this time," Zhang Su said. "If not, the nuclear weapons of Britain during the Cold War would have been controlled by the wizards of the Soviet Union." "That's good." Hermione breathed a sigh of relief, I also want to remind Professor Dumbledore of this." "Then why did Professor Slughorn call Bella and the others traitors?" Harry asked. "The reason is the same as the Weasley family being called pure-blood traitors," Zhang Su replied. Harry's trio understood in seconds. Next, Harry and the others asked some questions about the wizards in the government, and Zhang Su roughly told them the history of this group of wizards. The Harry trio left shortly after. For them, tonight was a night of great harvest both materially and spiritually, and the news was enough for them to digest for a while. After Harry and the others left the kitchen, Zhang Su seemed to be the only one left here. Zhang Su walked to the place where the professors were just now, and when he approached, Dumbledore appeared in the empty place. After finding a seat next to him and sitting down, Zhang Su asked Old Deng, "Is it really okay to do this, Professor?" A large number of huge footprints were found on the beach near Dover. Dumbledore ignored Zhang Su's question and said, "More and more giants have come to the UK. In addition to giants, there are also werewolves from other parts of Europe. The werewolf army has been regrouped. Voldemort is gathering strength, and we are looking for more allies. It would be good for some allies to get to know Harry. Now the Ministry of Magic of other countries on the European continent is happily driving those dangerous elements in their own country to the UK." Zhang Su said, "Whether it is a dark wizard or a werewolf, as long as they come to the UK, they will secretly fight against them. Open the door of convenience." Someone even hinted that the guy from Nurmengard came to England to meet an old friend. "Voldemort is a cautious man," said Dumbledore. "He will not act until he has accomplished something. Speaking of that old friend, he said he wanted to see you." Dumbledore finally said. "Gellert Grindelwald wants to see me." Zhang Su was terrified. "Why does he want to see me?" Zhang Su, who almost fell off the chair, sat down again, and then changed a posture that was not easy to fall. "He just wanted to chat with you," said Dumbledore. "He's been wanting to see you." Zhang Su tapped his fingers on the table, wondering why the first generation of the Dark Lord wanted to chat with him. After thinking for a while, he replied, "Well, when? Let's take the Easter holiday." Dumbledore said, "After the holiday is over, I will give you a holiday until the end of this semester, and let you go back to China to take the college entrance examination." Zhang Su was speechless. This reason was very powerful and very tempting. "Why?" Zhang Su asked, looking into Dumbledore's eyes. "You are the last insurance. I don't want to put you in extreme and uncontrollable danger." Dumbledore said. His eyes were full of determination when he looked at Zhang Su. "I'll catch Malfoy later and tie him to a rock and sink him into the lake, or dig a hole in the Forbidden Forest and bury him, so that the danger can be controlled," Zhang Su said. The corners of Dumbledore's mouth twitched a little, because if he didn't stop him, Zhang Su's actions were likely to succeed. It took a matter of minutes to fool Dobby on the grounds of Harry's safety and tie Malfoy out. "Malfoy's actions are necessary," said Dumbledore. "Only in this way can Voldemort be at ease." "Then you are not afraid that I will never return?" Zhang Su finally asked curiously. "You know that I have a strong desire to survive, and I will run away if something goes wrong. Then I can only choose to trust you." Dumbledore replied, "After all, you are the biggest uncontrollable factor in my plan. Let me think about it." Zhang Su sighed and said, "If things change, I will act from my heart." Chapter 406. 2 years later? When Zhang Su returned to Hogwarts again, he was already a middle-aged man in his late 40s, and he took the opportunity to send his youngest daughter to Hogwarts to study in Hogwarts. The Hogwarts Express arrived at Hogsmeade railway station. On the train, many students curiously knocked on the door of Zhang Su's compartment when they passed by and asked him if he was the new professor, but he deliberately replied, "Actually, I am the new principal." After getting off the train, he saw the white-haired Hagrid still holding a lantern as he did many years ago to greet the first-year freshmen to get ready to board the boat. After saying hello to Hagrid from a distance, and watching his little daughter jump into the boat with the new friends he met on the train, he came to the gate of Hogwarts with a BIU. He was greeted at the gate by another middle-aged man who also began to greasy. Standing in front of the basilisk fountain, Zhang Su looked at the statue based on himself standing in the pool, while chatting with Neville about his parents' problems over the years. Just when the students arrived at the gate of Hogwarts in a carriage pulled by Thestrals, Zhang Su rejected Neville's suggestion of inviting him to the cafeteria as a guest for dinner, and walked alone to the place where the Great Lake and the Forbidden Forest meet. Dumbledore's white tomb was built at the place Zhang Su suggested back then, and there was no sound of insects and birds singing around, and it was eerily quiet. Zhang Su took out 3 sticks of incense and lit them on the grass in front of the tombstone, then stood there quietly, looking at Bai's tombstone through the smoke of sandalwood. Just when he was going to play disco in front of the grave, he suddenly felt movement around him, and a cat walked behind him at some point. He subconsciously took out a dried fish, knelt down and handed it to the cat. As a result, the kitten's right front paw suddenly became the size of a casserole pot, and then vigorously breathed towards his face. In order to avoid the cat's claws, he jumped back and fell off the sofa with a boom. Zhang Su, who was rubbing his head, got up from the ground, and found that he had fallen asleep unconsciously lying on the sofa while thinking about something just now, and then had a dream the notebooks and water-based pens that were originally held in his hand for taking notes and records fell to the ground, and he was crushed under him when he fell off the sofa. After Zhang Su sat down on the sofa again, he flipped through his notebook. Except for drawing a ghost note at the end because he fell asleep unknowingly, the first few pages contain the information he got in the conversation with Dumbledore in the kitchen, and the corresponding treatment method plan made by oneself. Zhang Su, who regained consciousness, saw the records in his notebook full of question marks, and couldn't help shaking his head and smiling bitterly, because Dumbledore's actions really puzzled him. In layman's terms, Dumbledore has been playing a big game of chess, and the trio from Snape to Harry are all pawns in his hands. He observed in secret, planned, laid out, and kept pulling the wheel of history out of the ditch, but the wheel often rolled into another ditch. When he was about to take the most important action in his life, he decided to temporarily remove Zhang Su, who thought he was a powerful chess piece, but was actually an accidental machine, from the chessboard temporarily. And Zhang Su is very puzzled by Dumbledore's current actions. He has seen people who dare to sacrifice themselves, but he doesn't think that Dumbledore will still sacrifice himself easily when he already knows what Voldemort's side will do next. Period. A while ago, Zhang Su made clear and hinted to Dumbledore that Voldemort might be beheaded. Under such circumstances, if Loudang hadn't prepared for this, he would have nothing to say. However, what makes Zhang Su even more speechless is that Dumbledore's decision is to follow Voldemort's steps. Tune down. Dumbledore is not only the most powerful fighting force on their side at present, but also a symbol of fighting against Voldemort. Although Harry Potter has also gained fame after a series of recent campaigns after cooperating with the Ministry of Magic, it is still far behind Loudang's century-old brand. Zhang Su thought that Dumbledore would not fail to see this, but he didn't understand why Old Dang would make the worst choice in his opinion. Under the current situation, what Zhang Su is most afraid of is that Loudang will take advantage of it as in the plot, and Voldemort, who is much stronger than in the plot, will take advantage of the opponent's morale to plummet. Get rid of the Ministry of Magic and the Order of the Phoenix. If Voldemort really came to power at that time, the British government estimated that some law and order wars would be fought, and if it was not done well, there would be a United Nations army group to clean up the dungeon. And there is another possibility that Dumbledore intends to play fake death, and then suddenly pops up to scare Voldemort, but this method is not reliable. If someone makes up 2 knives, it is easy to get rid of it. So when Zhang Su didn't understand Dumbledore's follow-up arrangements, he began to consider a reliable way out for the upcoming battle. Early the next Sunday morning, Harry, who just got up and was still lying in bed, suddenly remembered something. He hadn't been able to ask Zhang Su what he was discussing with Malfoy in the middle of the night that night. Too many things happened that night. Later, because of the confinement, he didn't have time to find Zhang Su, so he gradually forgot about it. It's just that when Harry finished his breakfast and was about to find Zhang Su, he used the Marauder's map to confirm his location, and found that he was not on the castle, but on the edge of the map. He saw many students speeding towards the Forbidden Forest. Move, and then a student ran into the cafeteria and said something happened in the Forbidden Forest. Realizing that something happened, Harry called his 2 friends to join in the fun. At this time, the edge of the Forbidden Forest was full of noise, shouts, spells, and wounded wailings could be heard endlessly. From time to time, some students rushed to the castle carrying stretchers with injured students on them. When Harry and his party were about to walk to the Forbidden Forest, they saw Colin Creevey and another classmate carrying his younger brother Dennis Creevey out of the Forbidden Forest on a stretcher. Harry hurried over and asked, "Colin, what happened to Dennis and was attacked by someone?" "No one attacked us," Colin said, shaking his head. At this moment, Dennis, who was lying on the stretcher, waved to Harry. At this moment, Dennis' hands, face and other exposed skin were blackened by some explosion, and a lot of hair was burned off. After Harry walked over, he said, "I was injured by 2 cherries." Harry was stunned, and then Dennis continued, "Earlier this morning, we met to catch sheep in the Forbidden Forest, but no one expected that the plants on the edge of the Forbidden Forest are crazy." At this moment, the corners of Harry's mouth twitched a few times, and he now knew how these guys died after they died when they went to the Forbidden Forest yesterday. They took the safe route without danger, but now these guys are just rushing in regardless. Harry asked Dennis to take good care of his injuries, and then asked Colin to take his brother to the school infirmary as soon as possible, and it would probably be placed in the corridor later. When Harry and the others walked into the Forbidden Forest, they found that Neville was shouting loudly, and he was instructing the students to rescue those unlucky ones who had been beaten black and blue by peas, peppers and cabbages. Next, Harry and the others saw that the 2 injured classmates who were helping each other stepped on a potato that was slightly exposed from the ground, and were blown into the air with a bang. Chapter 407 Make Money, Headmaster. At this moment, Madame Pomfrey felt that she should report to Dumbledore and ask for a salary increase. If there is no salary increase, it would be fine to pay a performance bonus based on the number of students she cured. Now the wards of the school infirmary are full, and the beds are full of seriously injured students, but if any more seriously injured students are brought in, they can only lie in the beds in the corridor up. As for the students with minor injuries, each of them gets a bottle of potion and then get out of here, don't make trouble here. Fortunately, although the number of injured students was large, most of them were soft tissue impact injuries, and the others were some burn injuries. Except for Zacharias Smith's injuries in the Badger Academy, Madame Pomfrey could know the injuries how to deal with it. So after Madame Pomfrey classified the injured students according to their injuries, she asked the students who were okay to help pour and administer the medicine. As more and more students came to help, Madame Pomfrey finally breathed a sigh of relief. While Madame Pomfrey was busy, Dumbledore, Professor Sprout, and Neville stood beside the messy crime scene, silently looking at the crumbling corn, cherry trees, peppers, and the ground thorn grass that was trampled to half-life before it matured. After the 3 of them walked around, Professor Sprout sighed and said, "Fortunately, they were only planted for 3 months, and if they mature 2 or 3 months later, those students would not just be injured and be sent to the school infirmary." Dumbledore didn't answer, and after looking around the scene carefully, he said, "So can it be restored in the near future?" Professor Sprout sighed and said, "There are no seedlings that can be transplanted in greenhouse number 51. It may take until March to retransplant." Neville continued on the side, "Today they shot almost all the seeds, and when the weather starts to warm up next month, it is estimated that at least half of the seeds will survive, so all the previously set up safe passages in this area will be gone used." "What about the quick recovery of the remaining injured plants?" Dumbledore asked. "As long as the fertilizer is sufficient," Professor Sprout said, wringing his fingers, "but you also know that special effect fertilizers require various special materials to configure materials such as Con, Capo, KSO, etc." Dumbledore was confused by the combination of letters and numbers at the end of Sprout. Although he didn't know what the combination of letters and numbers meant, it didn't prevent him from understanding Sprout's words. The central idea of Sprout's remarks is money. "You can submit the request report to the principal's office later," Dumbledore said to Sprout and left. "Longbottom, go and estimate how much fertilizer we actually need." Sprout arranged a task for Neville. "Then the report says that the amount planned to be purchased this month is 80% of the actual total amount, 60% in February, and 40% in March. Month is 20, April is, comma." Neville counted twice on his fingers, and then said to Professor Sprout, "In this way, we need to purchase twice as much fertilizer as we actually need, Professor." "The fertilizer will be just enough," Sprout said. Neville asked, "So much money? Where do you think the money for the extra research we usually do is coming from?" Sprout said. "Neville, write the budget and give it to me in the greenhouse." Sprout said, "Any questions?" Neville hesitated for a moment, then pointed behind Sprout and said, "Should we kill people first?" An NBSP, Harry, who came over to say hello after seeing Neville, fell into a daze. Of course it is impossible to silence. In fact, Harry didn't hear what Neville and the others were saying clearly. Harry, Neville and the others greeted each other and saw that nothing was going on in the Forbidden Forest, so they returned to the castle. Harry took out the Marauder's map to see where Zhang-Su was, only to find that he was with Professor McGonagall in Professor McGonagall's office. It was not until lunchtime that Zhang-Su left Professor McGonagall's office. The fact that Dumbledore approved Zhang Su's 3-month vacation at the end of the semester made Professor McGonagall a little strange, so she called Zhang Su to ask about the specific situation, and Zhang Su told Professor McGonagall the reason according to Dumbledore's intention, and then fooled the matter. If nothing else, it was Professor Flitwick who came to see Zhang Su in the afternoon. As a result, Professor Flitwick did not show up, and Zhang Su was blocked by Harry at the entrance of the cafeteria after lunch. "You can't control this matter, so don't ask." Facing Harry's question, Zhang Su replied angrily, "I'll tell you the things you need to know, but that doesn't mean I'll tell you the extra things you want to know." After Zhang Su finished speaking, he turned around and left regardless of Harry's reaction. For Zhang Su, what he can't stand about Harry the most is Harry's all-round and unreserved suspicion and presumption of guilt towards Malfoy. For years, Harry had hoped to catch Malfoy, who was causing trouble, but things backfired, and Malfoy didn't do anything in the past few years, and this year, Xiaoma is finally going to make a big deal. Unfortunately, Harry's investigation will be brought into the ditch by mysterious forces at every critical moment. Zhang Su got rid of Harry's entanglement and returned to his dormitory, only to find that someone was already waiting for him at the gate of the dormitory. After inviting Luna to the living room, Zhang Su wondered what Luna wanted from him. Zhang Su went out early this morning, and there was no new tea prepared in the living room. He found that there was still half a jug of juice left over from last night, so he simply heated it with a wand and poured a cup for Luna and himself. When Zhang Su was preparing drinks, Luna invited him, "Come and comment on the next Quidditch match with me." "Ah." Zhang Su was taken aback. "You will be the commentator for the next game." Zacharias Smith was seriously injured this morning. He was carried back by Ron and Hermione. He was accidentally dropped several times on the way. The door that closed automatically caught his head, so he can't leave the school doctor's office until the next game," Luna said while drinking juice from a teacup. After the previous commentator Lee Jordan graduated, the position of commentator fell on the head of Zacharias Smith in the game between the Lions and the Snakes before Christmas. Zacharias Smith's overly biased commentary made the students of the Lions very angry, so he was cleaned up by the students of the Lions one day. Strangeness, it's just that what people didn't expect was that the people who took the opportunity to make trouble were Ron and Hermione, but considering that this unlucky guy attacked Ron with words several times during the commentary of that game, it's not bad that Ron didn't carry him to the Great Lake today. Zhang Su thought for a while, and then asked, "Why did you think of asking me to be the commentator?" "This is Professor Flitwick's request," Luna replied. "The professor said that I can only agree to let me do the commentary if I cooperate with you." Professor Flitwick is obviously worried that Luna will let go of herself when explaining, so it is safe to let Zhang Su participate. It's just that Professor Flitwick didn't expect what to do if Zhang Su also let himself go. Chapter 408. Zhang Su became a bowl eater for 9 days. The time has come to February, and the temperature at this time is warmer than last month. The most intuitive manifestation is that there is no snow on the campus, and the melting snow makes the land outside the castle muddy. Around the Forbidden Forest at this time, a group of hard-working students were evenly spreading the special effect compound fertilizer with a pungent smell in the bucket into the soil. Hogwarts explicitly prohibits students from entering the Forbidden Forest without permission. Although some students have never taken this rule seriously, they should be punished obediently if caught. So the students who broke into the Forbidden Forest and accidentally opened the copy of Plants vs. Wizards last month became free labor to restore the damaged plants, which made Neville a small foreman on the construction site. Warmer weather means Quidditch is about to resume, and ahead of this year's Quidditch, there's nothing more appealing to students than apparition. Because this magic is very dangerous, maybe Zhang Su will lose some parts and become Zhang Jiu after BIU, so he dare not learn it privately without professional guidance. It's the same in China. Learning similar spells is like taking a driver's license test. Only a licensed professional can teach them after they are old enough. Even if there are people who are not afraid of death and dare to learn, almost no one dares to teach in case of lack of arms and legs. He has to bear the responsibility. This made Zhang Su, who had coveted this magic for a long time and had mastered a lot of relevant theoretical knowledge, been looking forward to the start of the class for a long time. Due to the weather, the teaching activities originally planned to be carried out on the lawn had to be moved to the cafeteria. When the students of the apparition training class walked into the cafeteria, they found that the tables and chairs in the cafeteria were gone again, and the deans of the 4 schools and the teacher of the training class, Wickedicus, stood on the professor's seat. Wickedicus's appearance looked a little abnormal. His skin was too pale, his hair was very thin, and his eyelashes were actually transparent. This made Zhang Su suspect that he might be an albino. Soon Zhang Su stopped paying attention to whether the other party had a genetic disease, because after Wikidicors's opening remarks, the 4 deans began to line up the students in the cafeteria to leave 5 feet for the next study space. At this time, the evil consequences of Hogwarts not doing exercises between classes began to appear. The students crowded together in a mess. Either you were too close to me, or someone suddenly bumped into a few people who had already lined up. Zhang Su ran to the side of the cafeteria and found a place to stand, and then watched silently as the students lined up under the command of the 4 deans. If any class in a domestic elementary school is so chaotic before doing inter-class exercises, the head teacher will have to be scolded to death by the school leaders. When Professor McGonagall, who was reprimanding a few students who were standing around, passed by, Zhang Su and Professor McGonagall muttered a few words. After getting Professor McGonagall's consent, Zhang took out his wand and prepared to cast spells. The next moment, the candles in the cafeteria suddenly dimmed, and then horizontal and vertical flames suddenly appeared on the ground, dividing the cafeteria floor into 5-foot-sized grids. Next, under the command of Professor McGonagall, the students quickly stood in the middle of the grid drawn by the flames. When the students all stood up, the flames on the ground disappeared, and the candles in the cafeteria returned to their usual brightness. An NBSP, Zhang Su used this false fire spell to scare people a lot in the past. The students in the cafeteria were frightened a lot back then, and later he also used this spell to fool lower grade students. After the students lined up and quieted down, Tychus began to lecture, and he waved his wand to make a wooden hula hoop appear in front of each student. Target destination, determination determine, calm deliberan. These are the 3 most important Ds of apparition. Tychus began to introduce the main points of this magic. First focus on the target, then make up your mind to occupy the space where the target is, and then let yourself go into void while jumping up and turning in circles. The movements should not be blunt, but calm. Before jumping up and circling in circles, Zhang Su recited the gist of the apparition spell. Although he has used apparition to travel around for so many years, but before he himself is about to use the magic of apparition for the first time, he is still a little excited. Zhang Su concentrated on looking at the wooden circle on the ground in front of him, then used self-hypnosis to imply that his whole body appeared in that circle, and finally jumped up, turning gracefully in a circle in the air. After the bang, he was stunned. When Zhang Su recovered from his bewilderment, he found himself lying on the bed in the school infirmary. Every year in the apparition class, there are students who will have a split body. Madame Pomfrey's voice came from the side, but I didn't expect that the first student who had a split body this year was actually you. I didn't expect that either. Zhang Su said subconsciously. Then Madame Pomfrey put a bottle of potion on the bedside table, and said, "Drink the potion and go to sleep. Your body is fine, but the mental stimulation is a bit serious. No matter who sees his body divided into several parts, he can still maintain a good state of mind." After Zhang Su finished speaking, he swallowed the medicine given by Madame Pomfrey. "This medicine is so bitter." Madame Pomfrey said, "This is the first time I've heard of someone putting every part of their body into the wooden ring on the first attempt, while leaving the part above the chest in place. I heard that the surrounding students were quite stimulated. The scene at that time was in chaos, and the professor managed to put you together. It's just that today's class had to end early." Madame Pomfrey seemed to have some complaints about Zhang Su. She spent a full 15 minutes complaining about him, and finally left with an empty medicine bottle after complaining. Zhang Su looked at the clock hanging on the wall of the ward. It was already lunchtime, and his stomach began to growl with hunger. Just when Zhang Su was thinking about whether to ask Dobby to deliver food to him, he suddenly smelled a familiar fragrance. "Here, eat it while it's hot." Scarlet put a bucket of steaming Kang Shuaifu on the bedside table next to Zhang Su's hospital bed. Zhang Su picked up the instant noodles and asked while sucking, "Where are the instant noodles?" Scarlet, who was sitting on the chair beside the bed, did not answer immediately, but said after Zhang Su had finished his last sip of soup, "The food reserve that I found when I packed my luggage a few days ago will expire next month." Chapter 409 Miscellaneous Thoughts, Go Play with Eggs. After you've just had an embarrassment, it's not a good feeling to be stared at with a funny face by an acquaintance, especially if you can't beat the other person at the moment. If you want to say something, just say it. Zhang Su couldn't stand the other party's eyes. You really dismantled yourself into 8 pieces. Scarlet asked with an exaggerated surprised expression. I heard that you almost put your left leg and right leg backwards at first. Are you here to see my joke? Zhang asked angrily. Yes. Scarlet replied with a nod. Come on, let me check if there are any missing parts. Believe it or not, I'll beat you up. Zhang said viciously. The other party didn't answer, but stretched out his hands to check Zhang head like checking whether the watermelon is ripe. Zhang suddenly stretched out his hand, knocked on her head, and said, You are playing with fire, do you know? The person whose head was hit rubbed the top of his head with his hands, and said at the same time, When it comes to playing with fire, I can't compare to you. Hand over all the photos you took at the London Zoo, Zhang said as he stretched out his hand again, preparing for another beheading. As a result, the other party entered into a state of defensive defense. While resisting Zhang hand hammer, he said, It's useless, I have already sent the electronic version. Half a year later, a computer virus named Panda Lights Candles spread like a tsunami on the internet all over the world. It's just that the vast majority of users whose computers were infected found that when the virus broke out, except for a naive cartoon giant panda jumping out on the screen and lighting a candle, the programs in the computer were not damaged at all. So some people simply regard this cute virus as a desktop pet, and even refuse to upgrade the antivirus software because of this. Only a very small number of infected users found that all pictures and video files related to London, zoos, and pandas were deleted as long as the stored folder names or file names were stored. And the creator of this virus was called to the principal's office by Dumbledore the moment he walked out of the school doctor's room. In the past 2 days, Zhang has gotten used to people who can't be beaten and those who can't be beaten looking at him with funny faces, so he can ignore the expression on Dumbledore's face. The reason why Lao Deng came to him was very simple, mainly to watch the excitement. 1. Secondly, because Zhang disassembled himself into 8 pieces in the apparition class, the students present had psychological resistance to apparition, so Wikidacres asked Dumbledore to find a way to solve this problem. I thought you could learn this magic very smoothly. Dumbledore said with a smile, after all, other people have led you to use apparition so many times, there is no reason why it would fail. Zhang sat on the sofa and frowned. He had been asked this question many times, and he shrugged and said, Because I have seen someone who was disturbed by magic during apparition before, and the result was broken to pieces. I thought about that scene at the last minute that day, so I hesitated. Similarly, your performance that day frightened the students present, which left them with a psychological shadow. Dumbledore said, Your performance over the years has made you synonymous with excellence in the minds of many students. Hearing this, Zhang nodded cheekily. Dumbledore continued, However, your failure has caused many students, including those in the lower grades, to lose confidence in learning apparition. What do you think should be done? I don't know. Zhang shook his head and said, We can't use the forgetting curse on everyone to make them forget about it. I think the best way to solve the problem is to let the person who has the problem solve it. Dumbledore said, looking at Zhang. You don't mean to solve the problem, do you? Zhang asked in horror. Although this method is very tempting, I think there is a better way. Dumbledore said, You just need to set a positive example for everyone in the next class. Dumbledore's so-called positive example is to ask Zhang to make progress in the next apparition training class, and not to cut himself into pieces. In the next few days, Zhang took a little time out of the sea of questions every day to practice the first 2 steps of apparition. Dumbledore would not allow him to practice the 3rd step by himself. A few days later, after Zhang worked hard, he made great progress in the 2nd apparition class, and he only divided himself into 4 parts that day. Using the geometric sequence, it can be calculated that he will successfully master the magic of apparition in the last class in February. If it is calculated by arithmetic sequence, someone Zhang will be called in the next class. Can't you let your distracting thoughts play with you? Scarlet, who was sitting by the hospital bed, looked at Zhang who was lying on the bed and stared at the familiar ceiling speechlessly, and said, Think about that night with the 4 beauties you fought side by side are all good. Think about the Death Eater who is scattered all over the place. Why don't I ask Dobby to give you extracurricular tutoring? Scarlet continued, You know that house elves are very skilled at apparating. I don't think Dobby would mind earning a tuition fee. Zhang sighed deeply, and after a while he said, It's useless. The magic of house elves is very different from that of wizards. The difference between them is like CD and GS. Maybe you'll match up with the house-elves, Scarlet said. Zhang withdrew his gaze from the ceiling, then gave Scarlet a sideways glance, and said, "Just say that I'm not human. Don't worry about the details," Scarlet said with a wave of his hand. Then she cast a soundproof magic, and said to Zhang, "By the way, have you noticed that the atmosphere in Hogwarts is a bit strange recently? For so many years, I have never felt that what happened in this school was right." Zhang said, "From the year I went to Hogwarts to last year, which year did not have a bunch of unusual things happen? Which school year is calm in the school like this school year?" "It's true," Scarlet said, "when I was still in school, there were so many things that actually happened in school." Then she changed the subject and said, "Then why are you preparing to run away? You should also be prepared to run away." Zhang said seriously, "In the past few years, you have done a good job of Lao Deng by helping him matchmaking outside. There will be no one else in the Ma family. What do you know?" Scarlet also put away his joking expression. "The recent situation is too calm, and the actions of the Death Eaters seem to be deliberately attracting attention after muddying the water. Obviously get ready to hit the ground running. Old Deng wants to play big." Zhang closed his eyes after finishing speaking. At this moment, Madame Pomfrey came over to chase people away. Everyone must abide by the time she set when visiting the ward of the school infirmary, otherwise even Dumbledore would have no room to resist in front of her. Chapter 410 The Troubled Briton. In the third class of the 1997 apparition training class held in the Hogwarts cafeteria, after Wickedicris announced the start of free practice, the students present turned to where Zhang was standing, and the four deans they also stood around Zhang at the same time. Because someone might have to be carried to the school infirmary in a very short time later, the door of the cafeteria was not closed during class today. Therefore, a group of powerful onlookers waiting outside the cafeteria to watch the excitement also put away their snacks at this time, and all quietly looked at Zhang who was standing not far from the gate. Even Dobby, who was pulling a small cart to sell snacks, pushed the half-empty snack cart to the corner, then stuck out his big head from the edge of the gate, and looked at Zhang with his big watery eyes. Under this kind of strong onlookers, Zhang felt a huge pressure on his body. It seemed that if he didn't divide himself into two parts, he would feel sorry for the people who watch the excitement. When apparition appears split, the power of space magic will protect the separated place in a very short period of time, which is why Zhang did not cool down. But if the parts of the body are not connected in a very short period of time, when the magic power disappears, it will become a scene of a horror movie. After two failures and being rescued again, Zhang no longer fears being split into several pieces by apparition on another level. If you can't die anyway, let's try a few more times. After taking a deep breath, Zhang first gave himself a mechanical mind to adjust his fluctuating emotions. If it weren't for being unable to use other magic while apparating, he wouldn't have to tear himself apart. When he felt that his mind was as calm as water and there were no distracting thoughts, Zhang first released the mechanical mind, and then followed the 3DS that should be paid attention to when using apparition, take off, and let himself go while turning in circles. The feeling of being involved when moving in space reappeared on Zhang body. At this moment, a picture of himself appearing safely inside the wooden circle appeared in his mind. The next moment, there was a huge cheer from inside and outside the cafeteria, and the waves even shook the candles floating above the cafeteria like boats on the sea. The four deans who were always ready to rescue him breathed a sigh of relief, and even Wickedicris applauded. After Zhang saw himself appearing in the wooden circle with all his beard and tail, the boulder weighing on his heart finally fell to the ground. The surrounding students started their own practice after a few minutes of fussing, and the students who were watching from outside the door also started to leave. In the next practice, Zhang discovered that learning to operate is the same as learning to ride a bicycle. There is a piece of window paper between knowing and not, and it is easy to pierce it, so when he succeeded once, he found that it would not be too difficult to use this magic later. In the following time, Zhang simply made two circles on the ground, and then BIU and BIU between the two circles. When today's lessons were over, Wickedicris was able to leave Hogwarts with a smile on his face. As a teacher of extracurricular training classes, he still faces great employment pressure. If no one in a training can pass this situation, he will not be far from losing his job. After this episode, Hogwarts resumed its usual routine. But outside of Hogwarts, the situation became more and more tense, so that Hog, whom the students had been looking forward to, Mud weeks are all cancelled. Nearly half of the Daily Prophet's page is reporting bad news, while the other half is reporting the advanced deeds of the Aurors fighting the Death Eaters. The letters home brought by the owls showed that the current situation is not as good as the newspapers said. The Ministry of Magic told readers through the Daily Prophet that although the current security situation is not good, under the leadership of Minister of Magic Scrimgeour and the selfless efforts of relevant departments, the situation has not changed for the worse. In the media of ordinary people in the UK, The Times, the Daily Telegraph and the Daily Mail have all begun to report that an unknown terrorist organization has begun large-scale attacks on civilian targets from Wales to Scotland. The British people seem to have returned to the era dominated by the terrorist attacks of the Irish Republican Army. The negotiations between the IRA and the British government, which were innocent this time, have come to an end. In order to keep this hard-won result, they have to issue statements frequently, declaring that they have nothing to do with the recent frequent terrorist attacks. In order to concentrate its efforts on solving the island's problems, the British government also began to make some concessions. Voldemort's approach objectively made the British government's attitude towards wizards worse and worse, and some extreme voices even appeared in the government. Fortunately, these voices did not last long before they were suppressed by the Prime Minister. Faced with this situation, Dumbledore couldn't help but feel a headache. He was not familiar with this kind of public security war. What he was familiar with was the small-scale beheading operation of taking the head of a general from 1,000,000 troops. What he has always done, whether it is creating the Order of the Phoenix, cultivating Harry Potter, or contacting various forces in the wizarding world to stand by him, the premise of all actions is to kill Voldemort. But now Voldemort is hiding in the dark, a large number of Death Eaters are blooming everywhere, and he is a little helpless. In the end, it was Percy Weasley who proposed an action plan in which each party was responsible for its own specialties. At a regular tripartite meeting, the Law and Order War was discussed and resolved by the Ministry of Magic and the British government. Dumbledore, you and your Order of the Phoenix just waited to be in charge of king to king and general to general after finding Voldemort. Zhang Su closed Percy's letter, in which he said that Dumbledore neither supported nor objected to this plan, but when Old Deng heard his plan, his complexion seemed not very good for a moment. In his reply to Percy, Zhang Su reminded that the old revolutionaries will inevitably be uncomfortable when they encounter new problems, but the experience and ability of the old revolutionaries cannot be ignored. Because of this, in the process of communication, we still need to pay attention to the method, and we must not let the older generation think that they are underestimated by others, and we must not let the older generation feel chilled. Just when Zhang Su was going to the owl room to send the letter, he heard a loud noise coming from above the stairs, and the noise was getting louder and louder. He stepped aside at the corner of the stairs as the panicked footsteps came closer. There are always reckless students running up and down the stairs in the castle, and it is not a good thing to be hit by them. Soon, Zhang Su saw Harry running down the stairs with the unconscious Ron on his back. Ron, who was climbing on Harry's back, spat out a mouthful of black blood as he passed by. Not long after Harry ran over, Slughorn, who was as fat as a ball, also ran down. His pale face and profuse sweat were not known to be due to running fatigue or other reasons. Zhang Su was stunned for a while before he realized that today is Ron's birthday. In the plot, this unlucky child was poisoned twice because of eating the wrong food. Chapter 411 Rescue the Soldier Ron. According to Gobelet's third law, the antidote for a mixed poison is greater than the sum of the antidote for each individual component. It can also be deduced from this that the effect of a mixed poison is also greater than the sum of the poisonous effects of each individual component. There are similar theories in the science side. When two or more drugs are used in combination, if they act in the same direction and achieve mutually reinforcing effects, it is called synergistic effect. According to the intensity of the synergistic effect, it can be divided into additive effect and enhanced effect. Additive effect is when drugs are used in combination, the total effect is equal to the sum of the effects of each drug alone. Potentiation is when drugs are used in combination, and their total effect exceeds the sum of the effects of each drug when used alone. When drugs are used in combination, if their effects are opposite to each other, the effect of weakening or disappearing is called antagonism. People have learned from the long-term practice of poisoning that most of the mixed poisons can produce additive effects, and some can produce enhanced effects. Only a few people who are not skilled in the preparation of mixed poisons will produce antagonism due to the use of poison to fight poison effect. Due to the synergistic effect of mixed poisons, it can cause various injuries to the human body. Additional complications arise when potentiation occurs, and these additional symptoms sometimes lead to misidentification of the components of the mixed poison. If there is an antagonistic effect, Sometimes drinking more hot water can also detoxify. To sum up, when detoxifying a mixed poison poisoner, the antidote needs to solve the problem of concurrent damage in addition to the damage caused by the mixed poison itself. The simplest treatment method is to use a broad-spectrum antidote that can relieve the toxicity and complications of the mixed poison at the same time. For example, the best way to deal with soldiers attacking them is to use machine guns, and the best way to deal with tank assaults is to use anti-tank RPG, and the best way to deal with a coordinated attack of infantry and tanks is to make all beings equal at 460. And when some components in the mixed poison cannot be solved by the broad-spectrum antidote used, the poison that can be solved first, and then find a way to deal with other poisons that cannot be dealt with. However, the result of doing so is often that the poison patient has died before finding a way to detoxify the remaining poison. Therefore, the general method to solve mixed poisons is to use a variety of broad-spectrum antidotes to poison patients at the same time, detoxify with poison, and cultivate without poison. Now Ron's situation is that after Harry stuffed a bezoar into his throat, he suffered from severe convulsions and inability to breathe, but his coma and vomiting of blood did not improve at all. When Zhang Su rushed to the school infirmary, Harry just put Ron on the hospital bed, and he immediately went over to make Ron lie down with Madame Pomfrey and Harry. In order to prevent the blood spit out by Ron from choking the trachea and causing suffocation, Madame Pomfrey instructed Harry to remove the pillow on the hospital bed while preparing the potion, then asked Ron to lie down on his back, and then he lifted his neck slightly, and then turned his head to one side. At the same time, Zhang Su took out a copper basin from the warehouse in the school doctor's office and handed it to Harry, asking him to catch the blood spit out by Ron. Not long after, Slughorn ran into the school infirmary panting. Only then did Zhang Su realize that he was holding a wine bottle in his hand. Just now Harry briefly described how Ron was poisoned by drinking and how he rescued him with bezoar, so Pomfrey, who had just prepared the potion, saw the bottle in Slughorn's hand and let him first test out the poisonous ingredients in the wine. Just when Slughorn took out some empty bottles from the locker and was about to use the revealing charm to analyze the composition of the poison in the wine, Dumbledore and a group of professors who were notified rushed to the school infirmary. According to the requirements of the latest Hogwarts emergency response plan, Madame Pomfrey is the commander-in-chief in the school infirmary. When she is silent, the professors can only stand aside and prepare to help. While the deputy commander Dumbledore is on standby to deal with emergencies at any time. Hermione and Ginny, who came over after hearing the news, could only wait outside the door. Together Zhang Su and Harry helped Ron, who was in a coma, and then helped Madame Pomfrey pry open his mouth, and poured a large cup full of a potion made of various antidotes. After seeing Ron drink the medicine, everyone around him breathed a sigh of relief. However, less than 10 seconds later, when Zhang Su and Harry were about to put Ron down to lie down, Ron suddenly had a convulsion, and then a big mouthful of blood spurted out together with the potion he had just drunk. Seeing that Madame Pomfrey's potion was useless, all the professors present became nervous. "We need to find out the ingredients of the poison first," Madame Pomfrey ordered, and then she arranged tasks for Zhang Su and Harry. Snape began to help Slughorn use spells to analyze the mead he brought, while Zhang Su, Harry, and Hermione, Ginny, and Neville, who had been waiting anxiously outside the door, used other methods to analyze mead. Previously, Zhang Su helped the school medical office purchase a set of domestic rapid detection kits for toxic substances, but this rapid detection kit does not involve much European potions and is only used as a supplementary method. Now 2 top professors in potion science are analyzing mead with a popular method in Europe. Zhang Su and several others are using this rapid detection kit for detection. Zhang Su took out the special separating funnel that he bought in the small shop of Donia's house in St. Petersburg back then, and with the help of Harry, Hermione, and Ginny, who were twitching, he separated the alcohol in the mead from other ingredients. It's just that the useful component alcohol separated from the funnel in the past has become a useless part now. Zhang Su could tell from the expressions of the 3 of them that their memories of the Christmas holidays were not very good. Next, Zhang Su and the others each took several kits to test the solution obtained after the mead was separated. Madame Pomfrey, who had arranged tasks for everyone, opened the medicine cabinet and began to prepare a hemostatic potion to prevent Ron from vomiting blood to death. As a result, at this moment, an indescribable sound sounded from under Ron, and then an almost murderous stench permeated the ward, and the next moment, everyone in the ward cast a head-soaking spell on themselves. Regardless of the dirty and smelly excrement of Ron, Madame Pomfrey said after stripping Ron naked and checking for a while. His intestines are bleeding profusely. Then she waved her wand to get rid of the dirt on the hospital bed, and while continuing to dispense medicine, she directed Professor McGonagall to get a sphygmomanometer from the equipment cabinet to measure Ron's blood pressure. Madame Pomfrey quickly prepared a hemostatic agent for Ron to drink, but Ron still vomited blood, and his blood pressure had dropped to a dangerously low value. Although sending Ron to St. Mungo's at this time is the best way, but he can't stand the toss on the road in this state. Zhang Su, who was helping to analyze the poison in the mead, suppressed his urge to rush into the dormitory of the snake yard, grab the pony by the leg and tie him to a stone to torture the poison, because the level of the poison was too high to be prepared by the pony. What he got is more likely to be a finished product. At this time, Slughorn and Snape also roughly analyzed the ingredients of the poison in the wine. In addition to several kinds of poisons that can be detoxified by coproliths, there are also some plant-based poisons that can be detoxified by common antidotes, and some poisons. A poison that resembles snake venom. Zhang Su also got the results quickly. After comparing the two sides, it was found that most of the results were consistent. In addition, he also found jeskinine, which can cause convulsions, vomiting, and damage to the digestive tract, and can cause abdominal pain, diarrhea, and heart abnormalities, and a toxin that did not respond significantly to snake blood circulation toxin testers. At this time, a thought suddenly appeared in Zhang Su's mind. Back then, Ron's father was bleeding profusely after being bitten by Voldemort's snake, and he was rescued with great difficulty. So if the venom of the snake whose name is forgotten is used as poison and mixed with other poisons, it is very likely that Ron's current digestive tract bleeding will not stop. The specific antidote for the snake venom has been developed by St. Mungo's Hospital, and the school infirmary has also purchased it. It's just that Madame Pomfrey's subconscious will not think that people will be poisoned by snake venom, so she didn't give it to Ron. This antidote. After another attempt, Ron, who drank the snake venom antidote, finally stopped vomiting blood and passing blood, which made everyone present heave a sigh of relief. After learning the ingredients of the poison, Madame Pomfrey began to prescribe the right medicine, and after some treatment, Ron, who walked around the gate of hell, was finally rescued successfully. Madame Pomfrey came to Harry and said to him, "Fortunately, you used Bezoar to remove the effect of the acute poison in the first place, otherwise we would have no time to rescue him." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 412, A Predestined Calamity. After Madame Pomfrey announced that Ron was out of danger, everyone present heaved a sigh of relief. After a while, they found that Ron had no more problems and went to their own business. Although everyone was so nervous that even Ginny forgot to inform the Wheel Eyes about Ron's accident, the magical clock in the Wheel Eyes house would definitely respond immediately, so Dumbledore had to go back to the office, give permission to the fireplace, and let the Wheel Eyes come to Hogwarts. Snape had come here out of his duty as a professor, and he was the first to leave now that the students were safe. As Ron's dean, Professor McGonagall will help Dumbledore receive the upcoming Weasley family. Slughorn either left or stayed, and it was Dumbledore who called him away when he left. And Professor Babbling, who had been silently helping, left after asking for a sample of the poison alcohol. Then the other professors also left to go about their own business. The students outside the door were waiting for Madame Pomfrey's permission to visit them. After a while, Madame Pomfrey let them into the ward. After Madame Pomfrey cleaned up, all the peculiar smells in the ward disappeared, and Ron, who had put on his hospital clothes, lay quietly on the hospital bed. At this moment, there was no blood on Ron's face, and he looked very pale. Fortunately, his breathing was fairly steady, which reassured everyone a lot. Zhang Su touched Ron's carotid artery and found that the pulse was not too strong. With his hands back, he nodded towards Harry and the others to reassure them if he frowned and shook his head, those around him would definitely jump up and down again. Only then did Zhang Su, who was relieved, realize that Neville had followed him today, and looking at his uneasy face, if Zhang Su didn't know who was behind this incident, he would be included in the main suspect based on this alone. Seeing Neville fidgeting, Zhang Su looked at the time and found that it was past mealtime, so he called Neville to go with him to get some food on the cafeteria. On the way to the cafeteria together, Zhang Su asked, "Neville, You are not in good spirits. If I'd been careful, Ron wouldn't have been poisoned, Neville said ruefully. Zhang-Su looked at Neville in surprise. He couldn't figure out why Neville would say that. Neville then explained, while I was helping out in the greenhouse yesterday evening, Professor Sprout told me that today's trip to Hogsmeade had been cancelled. So I called Dobby and asked him to help me get to Honeydukes. Bought a box of honey cakes there for Ron's birthday. Zhang-Su nodded after listening. Today is Ron's 17th birthday. In the magic world, 17 years old means adulthood, so many people, including him, gave Ron birthday presents. Neville went on to say, because I was busy in the greenhouse very late yesterday, so I asked Dobby to help me take the cake I bought back to the dormitory and put it under my bed first. When I took the cake out from under the bed to give to Ron this morning, I accidentally took another box of cake by mistake. Oh. Zhang-Su sensed Worldline's malice at this moment, so there's something wrong with taking a box of cakes. There was a love potion in that box of cakes. Neville said helplessly, if I hadn't taken the wrong cake, Ron wouldn't have gone to Professor Slughorn's office to detoxify. At this time, Zhang-Su looked at Neville with interest, and then patted his shoulder, not knowing what to say. For a while it seemed that Ron was destined to get through this. If he could hide from Harry, he couldn't hide from Neville. According to Zhang-Chu's gossip, the current Neville is a high-quality potential stock. His pedigree is very pure, and he came from one of the 28 famous families in the British wizarding world. Moreover, his attainments in herbal medicine are among the top among the students in Hogwarts, and the gossip indicates that after graduation, Professor Sprout will hire him as an assistant professor, and pass it on to him after he retires. This kind of treatment is unique among the students in these years. Maybe he can go all the way from the position of professor to the position of dean, and then to the position of principal. And a very important point is that among the male figures in the 6th grade at Hogwarts, Harry Potter's height is fixed at 1.6 meters, Malfoy ushered in a hairline crisis at a young age, Ron the development is fairly good, and Neville's appearance has been gradually improving since last year. There are quite a few people who are jealous of such a potential stock with a prominent family background, a promising future, and above-average looks. So a group of girls started wielding hoes to dig the corners. Under Ginny's strict defense, those girls who wanted to poach Harry could only return in vain, and as time passed, the girls gave up. In the beginning, Hannah's iron-struck abbot was able to keep Neville, but there are unpredictable circumstances, and people have misfortunes and fortunes. Last fall, Hannah's mother was killed, and she left Hogwarts for a long time until the last year. It's been a month since I came back. During this period of time, the girls launched a fierce offensive against Neville, and the box of cake with a love potion was in Neville's hands at that time, but Neville threw it under the bed after taking it back to the dormitory. As for Zhang, the whole of Hogwarts knew that he was engaged, so no one teased him except some hot girls, and this guy can use the love potion to blow the bottle, which makes him accept the twin brothers' complaints after accepting the girls' food because the girls who didn't know Zhang-Su's details saw that the love potion didn't work. They asked the twin brothers for a refund. After walking to the basement, Zhang-Su could only comfort Neville and said, "This is the case, so don't be sad. Fortunately, there is no unparalleled road, and Ron is fine. Think about it in another direction. If it wasn't Ron who was poisoned with Harry at the side but someone else, maybe that person would have been killed. So you have saved someone else's life in disguise." After listening to Zhang-Su's words, Neville just sighed deeply. After entering the kitchen, the two of them found that the place had become a mess. Dobby was crying and shouting and jumping towards the fire in the fireplace. A Hogwarts house elf first hugged his waist, and then a group of house elves swarmed up and pressed Dobby down like an arhat. Just as Zhang-Su and Neville rushed over, Dobby used magic to lift off the house elf that was pressing on him, and then continued to jump into the fireplace. Zhang-Su immediately cast a stun spell and knocked down Dobby, who was covered in injuries. The two walked to Dobby's side, only to see that there were several bleeding wounds on his body. At this time, a house elf came over and said to Zhang-Su and the others, "Dobby said that the cake he bought poison Wei's, so he wants to commit suicide." "Well, I see, thank you." Zhang-Su said to the house elf, "Leave Dobby to us, and please help me prepare a lunch for 10 people. Except for Zhang-Su and his 5 students, Madame Pomfrey also didn't have lunch. Considering that Ron might wake up later and the Weasley family is coming, it's right to prepare more. Since the plants in the Hogwarts greenhouse are not lacking in lethality, Neville, who often takes care of the plants, has developed the habit of carrying some first aid medicine and bandages with him. and at this time they can be used to help Dobby bandage his wounds. Neville said to Zhang Su after dressing up many times, "I'll take Dobby to the ward first, and Harry can enlighten him when he wakes up." "Okay." Zhang Su replied, "I'll just bring my lunch there later." When Zhang Su came out of the kitchen with a plate full of chicken sandwiches and walked into the hall, he saw the backs of the wheel eyes walking up the stairs. Zhang Su put the sandwich in Madame Pomfrey's office, and then drove Harry and the others to the office for lunch. At this moment, Ron's older brothers also rushed to the school infirmary. Chapter 413. In Madame Pomfrey's office, there is a double-sided mirror that can observe the situation in the ward. It is just mounted on the wall above the desk. When Madame Pomfrey and the others are having lunch in the office, they see Wes in the mirror, the eldest child, third child, fourth child, and fifth child of the Lie family rushed into the ward together and came to the side of the sixth child's bed. Madame Pomfrey just wanted to put down the sandwiches in her hand and drive them away from the ward. Kira and Pangolin just finished eating the sandwiches in her hands. No, yes, and Harry left the office first and brought them over from the ward. Except for Charlie, who was leading a team to participate in the qualifying round of the 423rd Quidditch World Cup to be held next year in the Far East, the Weasley family was all present. After Harry and Madame Pomfrey introduced what happened and Ron's condition, Bill and the others breathed a sigh of relief. Then Madame Pomfrey allowed everyone to visit Ron in the ward, but they couldn't speak loudly, otherwise they would be kicked out. When he was about to leave the office, Percy patted Zhang Su on the shoulder, and then whispered in his ear to tell him to wait outside for something to say. Today is the weekend, and it is a rare sunny weather. The sun in the early spring is warm on the body. With Hogsmeade Week events scheduled for today cancelled, there were students both inside and outside the castle having fun. Finding a quiet place to talk at Hogwarts was difficult under these circumstances. In the end, Zhang Su discovered through the Marauder's map that there was no one at the observatory where he usually took astronomy classes. After Zhang Su came to the observatory, he found that the door here had been locked, but this was not a big problem for him. I have to say that it is a good choice to look at the scenery at the observatory on this spring breeze and sunny day. Here you can see the huge squid floating on the big lake that has been completely thawed, and flying around on a broomstick over the lake is a flying competition organized by the Flying Association. Now they organize racing and obstacle races. In addition, it also began to try to hold aerobatic competitions. By the lake, students from the Gastronomy Association set up tents, tables and chairs, and it can be seen that the place is almost full. Students and couples who can't find a place can only take snacks and tea away, and then find a place to have an outdoor afternoon tea in the ice and snow waterfront garden and the blind date corner garden where roses bloom all year round. Farther away on the meadow by the lake, members of the Drama Association are rehearsing a new program, which is a story about 7 brothers fighting a female Parseltongue. In the direction of the Forbidden Forest, you can see those punished students carrying fertilizer from the greenhouse area to the Forbidden Forest and spreading it like ants. And above the Forbidden Forest, a group of black shadows flew in a ball. Spring is here, everything is revived, and it's the season for Thestrals to look for a mate to mate. Percy, who went up to the observatory, walked to Zhang Su's side and said. Percy looked at the Thestrals above the Forbidden Forest and said, "If you look carefully, you can find that the Thestrals' flight routes are regular when they are looking for a mate. From the way they fly, you can tell which Thestrals are looking for a mate: spouses, who have found a purpose and are pursuing it, who have been pursued successfully, and who have been rejected." "I thought they were fighting," Zhang Su said after curling his lips. "I forgot you didn't take care of magical creatures," said Percy. "This is where the Newts take the test. You know me and Hagrid's relationship is bad," Zhang Su said. "Speaking of which, Thestrals are already looking for a spouse. Why are you silent? Bill and Charlie are getting married in a few months. Fred and Angelina will hold a wedding together after George's girlfriend graduates next year. Don't worry about Ron and Harry, but you are now a lone one." Percy looked away from the Thestrals, looked at the students by the lake, and sighed deeply. "Not yet," said Percy. Zhang Su spread his hands helplessly, and said, "Prunello broke up with you precisely because you didn't have any confidence." "My current job is too dangerous," Percy said. "Let's talk about it after solving the mysterious man. If everyone thinks this way, at least Harry and Neville won't exist anymore." Zhang Su shook his head and said, "In the summer, Prunello got drunk in the bar alone because of your affairs. If Cedric and Edward Cullen were also drinking in the bar that day, she would have been picked up by others." Percy's face turned ugly, and he waved his hands. not wanting to continue the topic, and then he said, "The whole of Britain has been in chaos since last year, and now there are cases happening almost every hour. I was preparing to attend a funeral on behalf of the Ministry of Magic when I was notified of Ron's accident. An agent of the British government infiltrated the Death Eaters, but died later. I originally thought that Hogwarts would be the safest place in Britain under the protection of Professor Dumbledore and the others, but I didn't expect such a thing to happen." "No one wants such a thing to happen," Zhang Su said. Only then did Zhang Su realize that there were thick dark circles around Percy's eyes, which looked somewhat similar to his own animagus form. "Do you have any clues?" Percy asked after turning to Zhang Su. "Are Aurors going to get involved in this matter?" Zhang Su asked in surprise. Because according to the unspoken rules between Hogwarts and the Ministry of Magic, Aurors will basically not intervene in the affairs of Hogwarts, unless there is a very serious incident that Hogwarts itself cannot solve. The Auror office has received a report from the headmaster of Hogwarts and the victim's family," Percy said seriously. Zhang Su looked at Percy speechlessly. "You are the director of the Auror office. Loudang told you that your sixth brother had an accident at school, and calling the police to the Ministry of Magic are two different things, okay? And what's the difference between your victim's family calling the police and talking to yourself?" But what Percy said, from a practical point of view, it made old Dang speechless. "Let's work on that bottle of wine," Zhang Su said. "It's been so long, I don't know if we can still find clues." "That's better than no clue," said Percy. "I'll check with Slytherin later on." Zhang Su nodded and did not speak. As for whether Percy and the others will find out about Malfoy, Zhang Su doesn't know, and he still doesn't know how Dumbledore will handle this matter. If Percy and the others found out that it was Malfoy's hands and feet, it might be a luxury for Malfoy to sink into the lake with a stone tide. Chapter 414 Percy, IN number 039, I've been annoyed recently. On the observatory, Zhang Su leaned against the stone wall, listening to Percy talking about what he encountered in his work. For Percy, this was a rare way to vent his inner stress. At Hogwarts, Percy was proud, and he had the capital to be proud under the pressure of his two outstanding elder brothers, Bill and Charlie. He strictly demanded himself to grow into a person not inferior to his elder brothers. It is a testament to his hard work that he served as a prefect and head of the students' body during his time at Hogwarts. The ambitious Percy entered the Ministry of Magic with his pride after graduation, and then leaped forward one by one in less than 3 years, until now he actually climbed to the position of head of the Auror office. Zhang Su was stunned when he got the news. How could the leadership of such a powerful department fall into the hands of such a young man? It's not magical to think that a student who has graduated for 2 years is a senior leader of the Ministry of Public Security. Nor is it scientific. We must know that the competition for this position was very fierce at that time, and many veteran Aurors, including Neville's father Frank Barton, were popular candidates at that time. Zhang Su had the idea that Percy was the protagonist of this world. Later, Zhang Su learned from Cedric's letter that Percy was able to parachute to this position, in addition to always supporting the Minister of Magic. Who is the Minister of Magic to support who? There is also a series of directors who can film a season behind it. Struggle and operate within. At least from the fact that members of the Order of the Phoenix among the Aurors did not object to this matter, it can be seen that something is wrong. After so many years of hard work, the fact that a young man was parachuted into his head to become a leader really made many Aurors feel uncomfortable, especially in this tense period. There may not be such a thing as being obedient and violating, but there is still such a thing as a pair of eyes on Percy waiting for him to make a mistake. In any powerful department, if you want to become a leader, it is impossible to convince your subordinates without excellent skills. This shows that Percy is under great pressure at work. The infighting in Auror's office has never been disclosed, so the specific details of what happened in the office are unknown to outsiders. Zhang Su only knows that Percy, after a lot of hard work, relied on whose clever mind finally got a firm foothold in this position. Zhang Su was non-committal about Percy's choice. Even if Percy chose to sell tea eggs in Diagon Alley, he would not say anything. Back then, Voldemort went to work as a salesperson after graduation. Who can guarantee that Percy who sells tea eggs will not be able to make a success in the future? Fan career. On the observatory, Zhang Su was listening on the sidelines, interjecting a sentence or two from time to time, sometimes arguing with Percy on some issues. As friends, it is our duty to share happiness and troubles with each other, and to help each other solve some problems within our capabilities. In terms of friends, Zhang Su feels that his behavior is quite similar to that of Slytherin. Slytherin likes to stay behind the scenes and give ideas, But he never came to the fore, and Zhang Su doesn't help you make up your mind. He can provide you with corresponding suggestions and help when you make up your mind. For example, he does not object to Hermione's emancipation movement, and he will provide Hermione with theoretical knowledge when needed. As a fairly qualified intelligence officer, he could analyze from what Percy said between the lines that the situation in Britain was already on the verge of danger. British ordinary people and wizards who have just enjoyed a stable life for a long time are back to the days when the dark clouds of terrorist attacks cover the sky. Extravagance into simplicity is difficult, and the dissatisfaction of the people who have lived a stable life has accumulated to a very high level. After Percy finished nagging about the work of the Ministry of Magic, he hesitated for a moment, and then said, "Now the Ministry of Magic of several countries is preparing to organize an international horror organization. Do you know about this?" "Oh," Zhang Su said in surprise, "I've never heard of this. This was proposed by the French Ministry of Magic not long ago." "I thought you would know." Percy said, "Now there are 6 ministries of magic from Britain, Portugal, Spain, Germany, Italy and Ireland who intend to agree to join this organization as the first batch of members because there were 7 countries. The plan is now known as the Rainbow Project." Zhang Su thought for a while and said, "It is estimated that the French Ministry of Magic is scared by the current situation in the UK, so we need to make some arrangements in advance. Because next year the French Muggle world will host the Football World Cup, and the Magic world will host Quidditch. The World Cup, if there is a large-scale attack by dark wizards at that time, it will be in big trouble. You must know that many top Muggle football players are worth millions of galleons. I'm guessing it has something to do with the Death Eaters trying to attack a Muggle football player named Shalholm just before Christmas," Percy said. "The player's house put a confusion spell on him and made him do weird things while he was playing on the pitch. Our guys were following one of the Death Eaters, and we ended up stopping them just as they were about to start their move. There were so many slots, Zhang Su didn't know where to start to spit it out." "Then what do you think about this organization?" Zhang Su asked. "Now that the general framework of this organization has been negotiated, I may represent the British Ministry of Magic to work in the General Secretariat of this organization," Percy said. And Zhang Su complained from the side, "Is your job cursed? Just like the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor, each job can only be done for 1 year. If there is an opportunity, it is natural to go for it." Percy said, "This is a very good opportunity. But don't you think your connections at the grassroots level are too thin?" Zhang Su asked, "And the families in the high level who are willing to support you are always hesitant to support you. Because you have been very unstable at work, you have been working hard every day. The time you stay in one place is too short. On the one hand, you can't have a deep friendship with your colleagues. On the other hand, others can't see your development direction, so they worry about your future, so they always have doubts when investing in you." After listening to it, Percy rested his hands on the crenel of the stone wall, and while looking at the campus under the evening sun, he was thinking about what Zhang Su said just now. Zhang Su waited for him to make a decision. It has to be said that Percy has been facing smooth sailing when facing career choices along the way, which makes him easy to drift when making choices, thinking that his smooth progress is a normal state, and he does not see some differences behind his usual place. After a long time, Percy clenched his right fist and thumped the crenel. It seemed that he had made some kind of decision in his heart. "I have decided that I still want to go to the International Horror Organization, but instead of going to the General Secretariat, I will join the Rainbow Squad and work there for at least 5 years," Percy said firmly. "What department is that?" Zhang Su asked curiously. "That's a joint strike force composed of multinational horrors proposed by Mr. John Clark to deal with tricky dark wizards," Percy said. "That's not bad." Zhang Su nodded and said. Just when Zhang Su was about to continue, the beep sound from Percy's body interrupted him. Percy took out the communicator and looked at it, then his face suddenly became serious. Seeing this, Zhang Su was about to step aside to avoid suspicion. At this time, Percy said, "I was planning to represent the Ministry of Magic to attend the funeral of the No. Agent of the British government." There was an explosion, and almost all the British agents attending the funeral died. Only Johnny Ingrid was unscathed. Zhang Su was speechless. "Can you tell him this kind of thing?" After Percy finished speaking, he left in a hurry, and Zhang Su also took out a communicator to send the message after he left. Chapter 415. People sitting at home, pot falls from the sky. After getting down from the observatory, Zhang Su went directly to the cafeteria. It was already dinner time, and if he didn't go, he would have nothing to eat. Then he finally made it to the cafeteria before the end of mealtime, and filled his stomach after wolfing down a meal. At this time, the news that Ron made a fuss in the common room after eating a cake mixed with a love potion this morning has spread among the 4 colleges, but everyone still doesn't know the news of his second poisoning. When he appeared, everyone thought he was shy and hiding. Ron ran into the common room early this morning, and recited non-repeating sonnets for 10 minutes in front of a girl whose face turned pale with fright. Ron would probably have been able to talk until dinner time if Ginny hadn't caught him starting to read his poem to Harry and then fought his way through the wall of onlookers before bringing him down. As for Harry and Neville, when they were discovered by the students in the dormitory next door, they were under the petrification spell and kept stopping Ron. In the end, Harry, who still lifted the petrification spell, let down Ron, who was tied up into rice dumplings and hung upside down on the ceiling of the common room doing pendulum movements, and brought him to Slughorn. After dinner, Zhang Su returned to the dormitory, and then plunged into the sea of questions in the study. There are still more than 120 days before the college entrance examination, and there is not much time left for him, so he needs to hurry up and review. As for the very tempting thing of using a time turner to go to the future to buy a copy of the real college entrance examination questions over the years, he gave up after struggling for 5 minutes, because the risk of doing so was too great. For a student, the college entrance examination is an all-round tempering, and it is the first opportunity for many people to control their own destiny with their own hands, and take responsibility for their own future with their own actions. Anyone who is interested in taking a further step in life will not give up such a rare opportunity. At 11:30 in the evening, Zhang Su finished checking the answer to the last question on the test paper and heaved a sigh of relief when he found that the answer was correct. What he did tonight was the one model math test paper for the college entrance examination that had just been sent. It seemed that his grades were not bad, reaching the expected level. After tidying up the test papers and stationery on the table with a wave of his magic wand, Zhang Su walked to the window sill with the tea mug in his hand, and stretched out his hand to open the window. The cold wind in the late night of early spring made him shiver. He closed his eyes and took a few deep breaths. The cold air penetrated into his lungs, awakening his drowsy head. A narrow waning moon hangs in the sky without a trace of cloud. Without the interference of moonlight, the stars in the night occupy the entire stage. The Great Triangle in winter is still hanging in the zenith, and the 5 emperors of Leo in the Great Triangle in spring have climbed to the sky above the mountains in the east. The tail of July is the constellation Leo, and the tail of Leo is this 5 emperors 136 light-years away from the Earth. Zhang doesn't know anything about watching the sky at night in his previous life. He thought about learning some astronomical knowledge to use when picking up girls, but in the city of the 21st century, don't expect to see many stars at night. If you want to see stars, you can only go to the suburbs where there is no light pollution. But if a girl is willing to go to the suburbs with you in the middle of the night, it seems that this knowledge is not needed. After staring at the stars for a while and thinking wildly in his mind for a while, Zhang Su's tense mind began to relax. After drinking the tea in the mug, Zhang Su felt a little hungry, so he planned to make some supper in the kitchen. With Dobby making such a fuss today, he can't be expected to continue delivering food. Meanwhile, Harry, Hermione, and Hagrid emerged from the ward, leaving it to the Weasleys. Walking in the corridor leading to the foyer, the topic of the 3 of them naturally couldn't be separated from the incident of Ron's poisoning. "Another child has been seriously injured, and Dumbledore is very worried," said Hagrid worriedly. "Is there anything he can do?" Hermione asked anxiously. Although it is normal for students in Hogwarts to be injured for various reasons, for example, 2 girls with furry ears on their heads are helping a boy with ivory in his mouth, but this compared with a serious injury that almost lost his life, it is not the same thing at all. Although he has all kinds of tricks to fill his clever head, he doesn't know who sent the necklace and poisoned the wine. No matter how many ideas he has, it won't work. Hagrid said worriedly, and the school board will definitely be dissatisfied with this matter. They think Hogwarts is a safe haven, but now this place is not safe. They might arrange the students to a safer place. "Where?" Harry asked in surprise. "Student's house," Hagrid replied with a bitter face. "They're going to close the school," Hermione exclaimed in surprise, "but it's not safe for students to go home now, and there are news of Death Eater attacks in the newspapers every day." "Keep your voice down," Hagrid, who was startled by Hermione, said to Hermione in a rare and severe voice, "but the school trustees think their home is safe, At least there will be no murders. This matter has put a lot of pressure on Dumbledore, so he may make some compromises in exchange for the support of the school board. What compromise? Harry asked. Let the Aurors enter Hogwarts secretly. Hagrid whispered to Harry and Hermione with difficulty in his loud voice. You must not talk about this matter, it will cause unnecessary trouble. Harry and Hermione nodded quickly to promise not to say anything. Now Dumbledore is under a lot of pressure, and it's the first time I've seen him quarrel with two people twice in a row. Hagrid said with a frown. Dumbledore looked angry at that time. Yet, it's the first time I've seen him like this with Bly. The next moment, Hagrid suddenly realized what he was talking about, and shut his mouth nervously. Dumbledore and Black were arguing. Harry's eyes widened in surprise, as if he wouldn't stop until his eyes were bigger than his glasses. Why are they arguing? Harry asked anxiously. For Harry, among the people who can give him the care of his elders on the surface, Dumbledore and Black are the top two. If the two had a conflict, it would be hard for him to be caught in the middle. Although Hagrid didn't want to say it, he reluctantly told it after Harry's repeated questioning. During the meeting that day, the matter of the necklace was discussed, and Black thought it was done by a student. Hagrid said to Harry. It's Malfoy, said Harry firmly. I've always suspected him. The next thing Harry noticed was something strange about Hagrid's face. It's not Malfoy, said Hagrid, it's someone else. Harry was stunned this time. It never occurred to him that there was another suspect. The person Black suspects is Zhang Su, Hagrid said in a low voice. At this moment, Harry and the others had already reached the foyer, and the hall was very quiet at midnight, which made Hagrid's voice reach the ears of Zhang Su on the stairs, who was about to turn and go down the hall. Zhang Su almost spat out a mouthful of old blood. At this moment Scarlet, who was standing next to him, tugged at his sleeve, and then gave him a funny face. Be honest and be lenient, Scarlet said to Zhang Su through voice transmission. Then Zhang Su didn't want to talk to her, and rolled his eyes at her. No, it can't be Zhang. Harry and Hermione denied it at the same time. Hearing that Harry and Hermione trusted him so much, Zhang Su felt better. If Zhang is going to do this kind of thing, he doesn't need to go around such a big detour, said Hermione. He has too many ways to kill a person without others knowing. Zhang Su, I'm really touched that you trust me so much, Zhang Su thought. Then Harry said, it can't be Zhang, there must be something wrong with the Black. Black always thought he was a dark wizard, and he's been in cahoots with the Malfoys before, said Hagrid, and he's a Parseltongue. I'm also a Parseltongue, why don't people suspect that I'm a dark wizard? Harry said angrily, he and Malfoy's family are just doing business, and the canned basilisk I gave you at Christmas is from Malfoy's family. Raised from a baby basilisk that was sold to him. Hagrid was expelled because of Voldemort and the basilisk, and it was impossible to say that he was out of breath. Voldemort can't afford to mess with him, so he can only vent his anger on the basilisk's head. Every time he eats canned food, he regards the meat in the can as the meat of the 1,000-year-old basilisk. Although the canned food is not as delicious as the fresh one. At this time, Hermione said with some uncertainty, is there any conflict between Black and Zhang? I found that Black has been hostile to him. You don't know? Hagrid asked in surprise. I thought you all knew. Hermione shook her head. She was not very interested in all kinds of gossip. It's because of Professor Scarlet, Hagrid said to Hermione. At this time, the two parties who were eavesdropping on the side began to take out their wands. What does it matter? Hermione asked. Didn't Zhang's father save Professor Scarlet many years ago? Hey, anyone who knows the inside story knows that this is an excuse, and everyone doesn't tell the truth. Hagrid said with a sudden smile, if you think about how the two of them usually look, the ghosts often see them going to each other's house alone at night. In the dormitory, do you still think their relationship is very simple? Hermione and Harry thought for a moment, then shook their heads together and said, no. Is it true what other people said? Hermione said incredulously, I thought those girls were talking nonsense, so I didn't pay attention. Perhaps the girls have something to say. Harry said thoughtfully. I've also heard that there is something strange between the two of them. Then Harry went on to say, I also heard that Zhang likes older women, and I think Professor Scarlet also fits the bill. Seeing that the topic had shifted from Dumbledore's quarrel with others to gossip news, Hagrid took the opportunity to say goodbye to Harry and Hermione. It's getting late, you guys hurry back to the common room. After Hagrid finished speaking, he turned and strode out of the castle gate, as if fleeing from something. It was at this moment that Harry suddenly remembered that Hagrid hadn't told him the details of the quarrel between Dumbledore and Black, and who the other person who quarreled with Dumbledore was. Harry chased out the castle gates, only to find that Hagrid had run away. Harry thought about going to Hagrid's house to ask him about things after Quidditch training tomorrow, and then turned around and returned to the castle. As a result, as soon as he walked through the gate, he heard a voice say, "Miss Granger, I think Gryffindor will lose 10 points for wandering around the castle at this late hour." Harry was taken aback for a moment, and then he saw Scarlet standing in front of Hermione, turning his head, and said to him, "Where's our savior, Mr. Potter, leaving the castle in the middle of the night? You will lose $30 for it." Point. After Scarlet finished speaking, the scoring hourglass placed on the wall of the foyer made a rattling sound. The next Sunday, Harry came to Hagrid's hut after a very unpleasant Quidditch training. After knocking on the door for nearly 10 minutes, the door of the hut opened. Harry saw Hagrid standing behind the door, leaning on a small tree-like stick as a crutch. He looked weak and his legs were still shaking. Harry asked nervously, "What's the matter with you, Hagrid?" "It's okay." Hagrid turned sideways with difficulty to let Harry into the room, then walked slowly to the chair by the table with trembling legs on crutches and sat down, and said, I started feeling sick to my stomach this morning." Chapter 416. Professor McGonagall just strangled these two narrators. Hogwarts People's Broadcasting Station, Hogwarts Television. Everyone, you are watching the Quidditch match between Gryffindor and Hufflepuff at the Hogwarts Quidditch Stadium. The spectators sitting in the stadium looked at the commentary stand in bewilderment, and then they found a blonde girl and a handsome brunette sitting on the commentary stand, and now it was the handsome brunette who was speaking into the microphone. Then the dreamy voice of the girl resounded through the stadium. "Hello, audience friends, Luna Lovegood and Zhang Su will be explaining this Quidditch match for you now." Then Harry, who was walking into the stadium, heard Zhang Su say, "Fans from both sides enter the stadium to warm up and prepare for the activities. The game will start soon." "What do the fans do when they come in?" says Gut, the Lions batsman. Another batsman next to him, Perks, said, "Fight, the new Quidditch rules. Every time you knock down a fan, you get, points." In the auditorium of the Eagle Academy, Marietta Akimo asked the best friend beside him, Chew, "Is it really okay for the two of them to act as commentators?" "I don't think there will be any big problems," Zhang Chu said hesitantly. The game started quickly, with the captains of both teams shaking hands before taking to the air at Mrs. Hooch's whistle. Today is a fine weather for playing Quidditch, the wind is not strong, and white clouds pass by in the sky. The two chasers, Porter and Sharpie, flew into the sky like two butterflies chasing each other. They hovered over the court, looking for the snitch like vultures looking down at the ground. They all hoped to catch the snitch in the shortest possible time to end the game. Obviously, none of them noticed that the snitch was coughing at this moment and almost forgot that the commentator couldn't tell the location of the snitch. Zhang Zhong's energetic commentary came to an end, and the audience on the court let out a tsunami of contempt for the commentator. Because apart from the seeker, the audience is happy to spot the snitch scurrying around before the seeker. Then it was Luna's time. Smith of Hufflepuff got the quaffle. Then Luna's words changed. Smith was seriously injured in the Forbidden Forest not long ago. Ron Weasley and other Gryffindor students didn't care about his offense during the commentary of the last game. Just help, the spirit of Hogwarts who dare to do things and do good things, sent Smith from the dangerous Forbidden Forest to the school infirmary. After hearing Luna's explanation, Smith and the Sky almost fell off his broomstick at that time. Ron and Hermione, who carried him back to the school infirmary, still vividly remembered how he was seriously injured, and it turned into Ron's advanced deeds report meeting. At this moment, Ginny took advantage of the moment when Smith was in a daze, ran over on a broom, and snatched the quaffle from his hand. Professor McGonagall, who was sitting behind the two commentators, moved his mouth, but finally chose not to speak. After all, this wave of situation is beneficial to their academy. Ginny, who grabbed the quaffle, rushed towards Hufflepuff's goal like a ball of red flames. Zhang Su took over the task of explaining. For many years, the red hair on the Quidditch field has been the name of Grant. Whether Ginny, the symbol of Fender's victory, can score the first goal for Gryffindor, we will wait and see. 10 seconds later, following Ginny's goal and the cheers from the Gryffindor stands, Zhang Su shouted, "Goal!" For the sake of his academy's goal, Professor McGonagall endured this time. In the following time, the game entered a stalemate. The big Hufflepuff player intercepted Ginny's quaffle, and he took the quaffle and rushed towards the Gryffindor goal. Luna said, "Zhang, what's his name? I can't remember." "Let me think about it," said Zhang Su next to him. After coming over for a while, Zhang Su said, "Forget it, don't care about these details. He's Cadwallader," Professor McGonagall roared behind the two of them. Then Professor McGonagall turned to Professor Flitwick and said, "Is this the foolproof explanation you said, Phileas?" Professor Flitwick cast a disillusionment charm on himself the next moment, and then took the opportunity to slip away. The big man came to the goal with the quaffle. Facing the Gryffindor goalkeeper, he chose to shoot. Luna said, looking at the players on the field. "Beautiful," Zhang Su shouted at the next moment. The big man Cadwallader made a not-so-pretty shot fake, and then tricked the goalkeeper McLaggen very nicely. McLaggen was fooled at the first moment. A save was made in the opposite direction. He could have blocked the ball with his back leg after the miss save, and it hurt a bit, but it was effective. It's a pity McLaggen didn't do that. He moved his back leg and then retracted it. McLaggen, who has scored a goal, glanced at the commentary stand in front of the goal angrily. The reason for his anger was that Zhang Su was right. He could have blocked the quaffle with his calf, but his calf was blocked by the hard quaffle. It's uncomfortable to hit the ball, and it may hurt the bones in severe cases, so he retracted his leg at the last moment. But he couldn't do anything about Zhang Su. On the one hand, what Zhang Su said was reasonable, and more importantly, he couldn't beat Zhang Su, so he could only vent his anger on Ginny, who made a wrong pass. McLaggen's move drew boos from the crowd, including from his own academy. Seeing that Ginny was accused for no reason, Harry quickly flew down from the sky, but just in the middle of the flight, the quaffle passed McLaggen's side and flew into the goal. Now the Gryffindor seekers are pretending to be arguing with their keeper. Maybe Harry Potter has spotted the snitch sneaking towards the Gryffindor goal. Luna continued with her characteristic said the voice. "I don't think it's a cover, the snitch isn't there." Zhang Su continued, "It seems that the Gryffindor goalkeeper and the team haven't gotten along well enough, so this is the key to Hufflepuff's victory." Professor McGonagall, who was sitting in the back, was thinking about whether to turn something into a rope, and then strangle the bad commentator in front to death. The game continued, with both teams aggressively attacking each other, but it was Hufflepuff who dominated the scoring. Hufflepuff scored another goal. Now the number of goals is obviously Hufflepuff leading the score now. Luna do not mind the details. Now Professor McGonagall wondered whether to prepare two ropes. After hearing the narrator's conversation, the Hufflepuff audience sang 90-30. When it was time for a lion yard attack, Ginny with a quaffle dodged a bludger that rammed into him. Ginny hit beautifully. Zhang Su just finished praising Ginny, and suddenly shouted, "The beautiful Mrs. Hooch beautifully dodged the bludger that unexpectedly flew towards her." The bludger flew past Ginny and flew towards Mrs. Hooch. Mrs. Hooch didn't notice it until it was within 10 feet of her. Then Mrs. Hooch ended with a wonderful roll. Dodged the bludger by a hair's breadth, sharp reflexes, no sloppy movements. Mrs. Hooch used her skillful skills to tell us what really good flying skills are like. Dodging bludgers is the basic skill of a referee, but this is the first time Mrs. Hooch has been praised by a commentator when she is a referee in so many years. Applause. The game continued, and although Ginny and the others scored 2 more goals, Hufflepuff scored 3 more at the same time. Although Gryffindor fell behind 122, in the game, their morale is still high, which is allowed by the rules. Zhang Su reported the score for the first time in the game. Now Harry and Sharpie are hovering over the field, and we can see above them, there is a cloud that looks like a sheep grazing on the grass. Luna's attention will occasionally jump off the pitch. McLaggen left a goal. Is this Gryffindor's secret tactic to turn defeat into victory? Luna continued after finishing talking about the cloud. What happened next left the audience in a daze. Goalkeeper McLaggen grabbed the bat of one of his own batsmen and started teaching on the spot. Maybe, McLaggen has a lot of research on batters. Zhang Su said with some uncertainty. Zhang Su suddenly remembered that this scene was mentioned in the novel, but he couldn't remember what would happen after all. I have been preparing for the college entrance examination recently, and I don't care about other things. If Luna hadn't kicked him out of bed this morning, he would have forgotten that he was going to be a commentator today. It shouldn't be something very important, Zhang Su thought. However, at the next moment, a national curse from the ancient Eastern country floated over the Quidditch field through microphones and speakers. McLaggen hit the bludger hard with his club and hit Harry, who was flying towards them, directly on the forehead, and Harry fell off the broomstick without a word. What happened next reminded Zhang Su and many senior students of the scene many years ago. Harry Potter fell off his broomstick. Like a meteor shower, spells flew towards the falling Harry Potter from the stands in all directions. Harry Potter, covered in countless spells, stopped falling and was blown away by the wind again. Chapter 417. I want the whole world to know that this fish pond in Hogwarts is contracted by you. When Harry Potter was blown away by the wind again, 5,832 million alpacas galloped past in Zhang's heart. Fortunately, the wind wasn't too strong today, and there were no Dementors around to interfere, so the players on the field quickly brought Harry back to the ground. Professor McGonagall rushed into the field, and together with Neville and Seamus, who came to help, carried Harry to the school infirmary. The next game entered garbage time, and the players of the Lions' Court had lost their fighting spirit. After the Badgers' Court scored a few goals, their seeker Sharpie caught the snitch in front of the Lions' Court's substitute seeker. Not long after the game ended, several curses came out of the noisy locker room of the Lions' Court, and finally calmed down amidst the sound of explosions. The players, save for the goalkeeper, emerged from the dressing room shortly after, dusting their hair and robes. While Harry and Ron were sleeping late in the ward the next day, in the corridor on the 8th floor of Hogwarts Castle, a sneaky figure walked towards a girl standing alone in the corridor. A petite first-grade girl was standing in front of a wall with a copper scale, looking around nervously. Suddenly, the little girl found a person popping up not far from her. Like a frightened kitten, the little girl shuddered and the scale fell from her hand to the ground. Just when the balance was about to collide with the ground and make a loud noise, it suddenly stopped in the air just like Harry yesterday, then flew upwards and fell into the hands of someone who came. Zhang Su took the scale and walked up to the little girl, and asked, "Student, did you drop this scale?" But the little girl suddenly shivered when she saw who was coming, as if she saw the double-hole socket man smiling GGG at herself. The little girl was trembling like a frightened baby bird, and her body involuntarily shrank back. Zhang Su took a step forward, and she followed suit with a half-step back, her entire back pressed against the wall. Immediately afterwards, Zhang Su walled on the little girl. "Why don't you talk?" Zhang Su asked. "Do you think I'm not worthy to talk to you?" The little girl bit her lip and shook her head vigorously. The tears in her eyes were thrown out. Zhang Su bent his elbows supporting the wall, bringing their faces closer together. "What are you doing here?" Zhang Su asked softly. "Why don't we find a classroom and discuss the magic spell together?" "No," the little girl said with tears. "Please let me go." "Why let you go?" Zhang Su deeply stretched out his other hand to wipe away the teardrops on the little girl's cheek. The little girl was startled by Zhang Su's outstretched hand, and hurriedly turned her head to one side. As for the balance that Zhang Su was holding in his hand, he didn't know where he had silently bumped into it for a long time. "I've never tasted the feeling of being rejected." "Very good, you have successfully attracted my attention, you annoying little goblin," Zhang Su said with a sneer. "You are completely different from those pretentious coquettish bastards." "Not the same, they are only interested in my family, my wealth, and more importantly, my beauty. In the past, as long as I ticked my fingers, they rushed towards me like flies. Only you, so pure and unpretentious, just like a white daffodil, I like it." He the little girl caught between Zhang Su and the wall turned her head aside, trying not to look at the face in front of her. After coming here for a while, the little girl didn't hear the person in front of her speak again. When she turned her head, she found that the person in front of her was looking at her neck. "I didn't expect you to look so thin, but you are actually very attractive." Zhang Su's words became the last straw that crushed the little girl in front of her. Her legs gave way and she fell to the ground, and the next moment she turned into a monster. At this time, Zhang Su was in a daze. He had prepared a whole night of lines for the domineering president, and he still had a lot of lines left to say. "I also want to contract the Hogwarts fish pond for you. Why did you collapse so quickly?" Just when Zhang Su was thinking about what to do next, a loud scream sounded from the stairs not far away. Before that, Zhang Su didn't know that Professor McGonagall could make such a voice. "Malfoy, what are you doing?" Professor McGonagall's roar could be heard from the 7th floor of the castle. Well, the person standing in front of Professor McGonagall and the little girl now looks like Malfoy. There's a big pot of compound decoction in the potions classroom in the basement. Back then, Malfoy went to provoke Umbridge to find Zhang Su. Zhang Su collected Malfoy's hair when he used the puppet to transfer damage. Coupled with the effect of aging agents, he cosplays as Malfoy without any pressure. Facing the unexpected situation, Zhang Su took advantage of Professor McGonagall's hands and feet shaking with anger, and immediately dropped a smoke bomb from the Weasley twins' shop on the ground, and black smoke immediately enveloped the entire corridor. More than 10 seconds later, a strong wind gushed out from Professor McGonagall's wand, blowing the smoke in the corridor out of the window at once. The smoke cleared, and the little girl was still sitting on the ground acting like a monster, and beside her stood a bewildered Malfoy. Originally, Zhang Su wanted to turn into a big mosquito, and then fly to the corner of the ceiling to hide it when the black smoke filled the air, but he was blown to the corner of the ceiling along with the black smoke by the strong wind released by Professor McGonagall. The outside of the castle. After he learned from Peeves that Malfoy had Goyle and Crabbe turned into girls using Polyjuice Potion to stand guard for him in front of the Room of Requirement, he had the idea of doing a spoof. With the idea of being crazy and counting one by one, Zhang Su spent a long time recalling the jokes about the domineering president. It seems that the effect is good today. I don't know whether it is Goyle or Crabbe who was frightened today. I wonder if they will recall today's scene when they see Xiao Ma's face in the future. It's just that this method is to kill 1,000 enemies and lose 800, because at that time, the faces of Goyle and Crabbe would pop up in Zhang Su's mind from time to time, which made him almost unable to continue acting. As for whether the real women's clothing boss can crack the subject, he is absolutely not interested. Zhang Su, who had turned into a mosquito, took a while to fly into the study room of the dormitory through the window, checked his appearance in the mirror, and then walked out of the study room. He asked Zhang Chu and other girls in the living room who borrowed a place to study because they thought the common room was too noisy, "Do you want some refreshments?" It was precisely because of their arrival that Zhang Su found an opportunity for his actions. The girl present was his witness, proving that he was preparing for the college entrance examination alone in the study at the time of the crime. When going to dinner at night, the students found that the score and diamond hourglass in the foyer had undergone major changes, and the scores of the snake court had lost a thick layer. At the dining table, after learning the details, Zhang Su could only lament Malfoy's bad luck. Who made him come out of the Room of Requirement at the moment he set off the smoke bomb? Chapter 418 Airport Encounters. The next Monday morning, an owl came to Malfoy with a red howler letter. Generally, the countdown to howling letters begins when they leave the owl's legs, so when Malfoy stretched out his trembling hands to untie the red envelope from the owl's legs, two students suddenly left and the one on the right grabbed Malfoy's hands, and then stuffed the owl with the howler letter into Malfoy's arms, and then several of them violently drove Malfoy, who was holding the owl, out of the cafeteria. Malfoy couldn't resist, so he left the cafeteria miserably with a look of grievance, anger and despair. Not long after Malfoy left, the students sitting near the door could vaguely hear a loud roar. Before that, Malfoy hadn't had a bite of breakfast. And the students around in the cafeteria all looked at him with disdain. In herbal medicine class, Zhang Su learned from Daphne Greengrass another information about yesterday's incident. The person who was wall-donged yesterday was Gore, and now he is still in the dormitory as a monster. Yesterday Goyle showed the prototype in front of Professor McGonagall. Later, Goyle complained that since the beginning of school last year, he didn't know what Malfoy was doing alone, but just let them become girls and let them go until yesterday, when Goyle was out by himself, Malfoy stretched out his claws on him. And Malfoy's rebuttal was pale and powerless. He could only say that he had been in the Room of Requirement all the time, and when he came out, he found the corridor was completely dark and he couldn't tell what he was doing in the Room of Requirement, and the excuses he made were full of loopholes. And Crabbe, who escaped a catastrophe, was comforting his fellow sufferers. This incident spread throughout the Hogwarts common room last night, and everyone was disgusted with Malfoy's approach. If Goyle treats you as a brother, but you want to turn people into women and fuck him, very contemptuous. Seeing that Malfoy was not expelled, the punishment he received was only a severe deduction from the Snake Court, that is, long-term confinement, which surprised the instigator at this time. He made his last attempt before leaving Hogwarts at the end of the month. Since Loudang had saved him, Xiao Zhang would not be too troublesome. In this matter, another person who fell into a daze was Harry Potter. He had been keeping an eye on Malfoy's actions since he overheard Malfoy bragging about making big news on the train to Hogwarts in September. Now it turned out that Malfoy did such a thing in secret, which threw Harry's thinking into chaos. Have I been following not a Death Eater working for Voldemort, but a perverted sex maniac? Without his knowledge, Zhang Su almost went crazy again. After this incident, the whole school, including the students of the Snake Academy, stayed away from Malfoy, including Pansy Parkinson. No one talks to him now, no one goes to class with him, no one wants to sit next to him in the cafeteria. If it continues like this, it is estimated that Xiao Ma will have problems finding a wife in the future. The turmoil caused by Malfoy soon came to an end. Although there were very few problems in Hogwarts caused by excessive hormone secretion, they were not without exception. It's just that Malfoy's target this time was a bit beyond imagination. Dividing line recently, some students in Hogwarts have asked for leave to go home from time to time because of disasters at home. This makes the first thing students do when they go to the cafeteria every day is to see if any classmates around them have disappeared. So when Zhang Su disappeared quietly for 2 days, the students who knew Zhang Su were all stunned. They all subconsciously thought that something happened to Zhang Su's family. The students who didn't understand the situation went to ask Zhang Chu, but she was also at a loss. Dumbledore gave Zhang Su a 3-month vacation. Only the professors knew about it, but Zhang Su never told others. It wasn't until someone asked Professor McGonagall that everyone knew that Zhang Su had taken a long vacation to return to China to take the exam, which was more important than Newt's tried it. Zhang Su had already prepared for his long vacation. From the series of letters that Dobby quietly handed over to several people, to the meeting ceremony when he went to Nuremberg to meet Gellert Grindelwald, he was there. Be ready by the end of March. On the morning of the first day of the Easter holiday, the members of the Hogwarts Quidditch school team, led by Professor McGonagall, took the space shuttle that made Zhang Su look like a god, to Durmstrang. The college participates in this year's Tri-School Quidditch Tournament. At the same time, Zhang Su was personally sent to London Heathrow International Airport by Dumbledore. While at the airport, Zhang Su faintly felt a trace of magic. "Professor, there's magic in this airport?" Zhang Su asked in disbelief. He felt a little strange when he was not close to the airport in the taxi. When he entered the airport, he could feel that the entire airport and its surroundings were indeed casted by magic. "Can you see what magic it is?" Dumbledore asked rhetorically. Zhang Su sensed the magic power around him carefully, and then said, "It's an anti-apparition magic." Dumbledore nodded aside. It seems that in key crowded places, the British government's security work is still in place. When going through the security check, Zhang Su encountered a little trouble. Today, the security inspectors checked the long wooden sticks and chopsticks very carefully. And Zhang Su is dressed as a student, wearing a set of Nike sportswear, stepping on Adidas Wang, and carrying a huge mountaineering backpack, which contains some clothes and books suitable for the occasion. More importantly, his rolling pin is on the way. It is inserted in the backpack and is in a position that can be easily taken out. When Zhang Su's backpack came out of the security detector, he was immediately caught by the staff. The security inspector asked as if facing an enemy, "What is this for?" Zhang Su replied calmly, "This is a rolling pin. I am a chef." Then the security inspector pointed to this "Face the enemy" sticker on the wand and asked, "What do these words mean?" "Sometimes I use it to mash potatoes, so I marked the place specially used for mashing potatoes." Zhang Su nonsense. After the two wrangled for a few minutes, a man in a black suit and black sunglasses walked over to them. At the same time, the phone next to the security inspector rang. Just after the security inspector finished answering the phone, he let Zhang Su pass by with a big wave of his hand. At this moment, the man in black walked up to Zhang Su, and whispered to him, "Mr. Wu Li, please go to the VIP room, Mr. Zhang." "It's Mr. Bernard Woolley?" Zhang Su asked in surprise. "Yes." The man in black nodded. In the VIP room of the airport terminal, Zhang Su met Bernard Woolley, the personal secretary of the British Prime Minister who had met once in Hogsmeade's family. "It's a great honor to see you again, Your Excellency Woolley," Zhang Su said. "You don't have to be so polite. I'm meeting you in a private capacity today, and I'm going to the Caribbean with my family for vacation today," Woolley said. "I invite you to go to my hometown for vacation when you have the opportunity. I believe that the place with beautiful mountains, green waters and sweet air will bring you good memories." Zhang Su took advantage of the opportunity to advertise his hometown. A 7th-rank official in front of the Prime Minister, as the Prime Minister's private secretary, Woolley is now an old-fashioned politician in the officialdom. He has some privileges in his hands. What kind of person has he never seen? Zhang Su thought carefully about this. Seeing it through, he finally just agreed politely. "I've been looking forward to seeing you again in the cafe, but you've been in the castle," Woolley said. At this time, An 8 or 9-year-old girl who had been sitting on the sofa next to her and reading a book asked in surprise, "You live in a castle?" Zhang Su glanced at Wu Li, then Wu Li nodded lightly, and then said in a low voice, "This is my granddaughter Margaret. She is the same kind of person as you." Zhang Su looked at the white and tender Margaret with some baby fat in surprise, and said, "Our school is in a castle in Scotland." "What did you learn in school?" asked the blonde girl. "Did you learn how to turn water into ice cubes?" Next, Margaret held a teacup in front of her with both hands, and the next moment the tea in the cup froze into ice cubes. At this time, Wooly, like other grandpas who encourage their children, said in a kind tone, "Great job, Margaret." Seeing Wooly, whose painting style changed suddenly, Zhang Su just smiled and said nothing. Zhang Su walked up to Margaret, tapped the teacup in her hand, and the teacup turned into a bouquet of roses in her hand. "We also learned how to turn teacups into flowers," Zhang Su said with a smile. Zhang Su's move won a burst of exclamation from the onlookers present. Then Wooly pretended to be casual and asked, "Can you make pounds?" Zhang Su, who understood the meaning of the other party's words, replied with black lines all over his head, "We have a bottom line, Mr. Wooly." The ecstatic Margaret ran to the old Mrs. Wooly and Mrs. Wooly, who had been sitting silently, and showed the bouquet of roses to her grandma and mother. After a while, Margaret put the bouquet on the table, then picked up the comic book she was reading just now and ran to the sofa where Zhang Su was sitting, opened the comic book and pointed to the pictures inside and asked excitedly, "Does your school teach a lot of magic? Does it have a headmaster with a white beard that grows to his knees, a professor who turns into a cat, a giant professor who is over 10 feet tall, and a little guy who is forever 16? Does the professor mean that the students can fly in the sky on a broom? And do the students often have a banquet in the kitchen led by a giant panda?" Faced with the little girl's barrage of questions, Zhang Su didn't know how to answer her. He only knew that the author of this book was in big trouble. "We are all curious about how much of the content in the book is true," Wu Li said to Zhang Su. Zhang Su took the comic book, first opened the cover to see who the author was, and finally had no choice but to quickly flip through the contents of the book. He couldn't afford to offend the author. Because the author and the professor who can turn into a cat have the same surname, the content of the comic book is the daily life in Hogwarts. The characters that appear in it range from the Weasley twins, who are often mischievous, to Peeves. Basically, the prototypes can be found in Hogwarts and used for children. It's okay for us to read it as a fairy tale book. It's just that Bernard Woolley and his family are special. They can see the information hidden behind the book. One can predict the reaction of ordinary families with children who have awakened their magical talents after reading this series of comic books. Zhang Su had never heard of these books in Hogwarts. Presumably students over the age of 11 are not very interested in such books, but Dumbledore must know about this, because he just passed magic told Zhang Su not to keep his family a secret. Next, Zhang Su told Margaret and everyone present a more detailed story about the contents of the comic book page by page, but he avoided certain contents intentionally or unintentionally. An hour later, Zhang Su's boarding time came. After bidding farewell to the reluctant Margaret, he arrived at the boarding gate of the flight to Berlin. "Are you really going to stop thinking about it, Professor?" Zhang Su, who was standing by the boarding gate and was about to board the plane, asked Dumbledore, who appeared next to him at some point. "It doesn't matter, the future world belongs to you young people," Dumbledore said. Zhang Su sighed, and then said, "Goodbye, Professor." After Zhang Su finished speaking, he turned and walked into the boarding gate. Dumbledore stood quietly behind the glass curtain wall of the terminal, watching the passenger plane fly straight into the sky. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story, and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 419. Why was this plane hijacked? The flight time from Heathrow Airport in London to Tegel Airport in Germany was less than 2 hours. Zhang Su, who was not short on money but unexpectedly stingy in some respects, bought an economy class seat. Perhaps his diligence and thrift moved God, so God rewarded him. Half an hour after the plane took off, he exchanged contact information with the JK of the European tour group of a high school sitting next to him on the right and the leading tour guide sitting next to him on the left, and agreed that he would go to Berlin to visit Berlin with them after he finished his work. After all, Zhang does not understand German, so it is very lucky to meet a tour guide who can speak German. During the chat, Zhang Su learned that the group of high school students from the Tokyo area on the plane were members of a European tour group formed by several local high schools. They came to Europe mainly to visit famous institutions of higher learning in Europe. When I was discussing with a high school girl Yui Ishihara whom I just met, where we would go for fun during their free time, Zhang Su suddenly asked, "Are there any students from Teden High School in your tour group?" "Yes," Yui Ishihara replied. As soon as she finished speaking, there was a sudden noise from the back of the cabin, followed by screams from various countries. Zhang Su turned his head and saw 4 men with spikes rushing up from behind. It could be seen that they went straight to the cockpit. The first runner also stabbed a flight attendant who was on the aisle. Zhang Su was stunned. He had encountered a hijacking and heard that the hijackers were speaking Japanese. Could it be that the Red Army came out of the arena again? The most important thing now is to find out whether these hijackers are going to take hostages to negotiate, or to hit the Eiffel Tower or something, but in any case, it is better to deal with the hijackers earlier. Just when Zhang Su was about to stand up, the 2 passengers sitting beside him plunged into Zhang Su's arms because of being frightened. If it was normal, holding a mature Fengyun and a mature girl at the same time, Zhang's heart would be full of joy. But at this time, both of them restricted his actions. In the next short time, 2 of the 4 terrorists watched the cabin, and the other 2 apparently entered the cab. One of the chubby terrorists turned his head to look at Zhang Su, who was holding the 2 girls, when he passed by Zhang Su's position, and then cursed viciously, "Baga, damn it now. The best time for action has passed." It would be fine if the terrorists did not enter the cockpit. Otherwise, if there is an accident in the cockpit, only Zhang Su himself can survive on the plane. After a while, the plane was still flying smoothly, and all the passengers who were threatened sat obediently in their seats. Apart from the sound of the engine, there were only some passengers suppressed crying in the cabin. The same is true here with Zhang Su. The more mature tour guide girl is just a little trembling, and Ishihara Yui has become a weirdo. While comforting the 2 people around him softly, Zhang Su thought about how to deal with it. As a wizard who has experienced many battles, it is easy to solve these terrorists, but no one can guarantee whether there will be a 5th terrorist hiding in the passenger. If a dog jumps over the wall in a hurry and dies together, he can only take out the flying sword and run away. Soon, Zhang Su decided to wait for the plane to land first, taking the security check at Heathrow Airport. The hijackers were lucky enough to hide the steel thorns in the metal crutches and bring them onto the plane, but they definitely couldn't bring dangerous items such as bombs up like they did themselves. It's just that some things have to be dealt with as soon as possible. After comforting the 2 girls on the left and right, Zhang Su raised his right hand as if answering a question in class. The terrorist closest to Zhang Su came over with a spike. This terrorist was the fat man who just called Zhang Su a fake. He asked viciously, "What's the matter? May I go and bandage that lady?" Zhang Su pointed to the stewardess sitting on the aisle floor and covering her injured left hand. "You're a doctor?" the fat terrorist asked. "No, I'm just a chef, because chefs are often injured by kitchen knives, so I'm very skilled in dressing wounds," Zhang Su replied. The fat man stared at Zhang Su for a while, and after he felt that such a cash charge would not pose a threat to them, he waved the spikes on his hand to let Zhang Su pass. What the fat man didn't know was that the reason why he agreed to Zhang Su's request so easily was because Zhang Su threw a small spell at him when he was not paying attention. Zhang Su took a little effort to pull off the 2 girls who were hugging him desperately. The process made the fat man so jealous that he wanted to stab him into briquettes with the steel thorns in his hand. After walking to the side of the injured stewardess, Zhang Su bent down to help her up, and then said to her in English, "I will help you go to the business class to bandage the wound." The stewardess was obviously terrified, and she was limp and weak. It took Zhang Su a lot of effort to help the stewardess, who was half a head shorter than himself, to the ground. There were only 2 passengers in the business class today, and the other 3 stewardesses on the plane were gathered here by terrorists. One of the stewardesses had a forehead injury for some unknown reason, and blood was all over her face. A terrorist who was a head shorter than Harry Potter stood between the business class and the economy class, controlling both cabins at the same time. Zhang Su put the stewardess who was supporting him on the empty chair and sat down, then asked about the location of the first aid kit. When Zhang Su took the first aid kit back from the cloakroom, he carefully took off the flight attendant's coat, and cut off the sleeves of the shirt with the scissors in the first aid kit. The flight attendant's arm was not seriously injured. After Zhang Su skillfully cleaned, disinfected and bandaged the wound, The wound stopped bleeding not long after. Then Zhang Su began to clean and bandage the wound of the stewardess in the front seat with a forward injury, then moistened a piece of gauze with water and carefully wiped off the blood on her face. During the whole process, the steel spike in the terrorist's hand was no more than 10 centimeters away from Zhang Su's neck. After Zhang Su covered the first aid box, he took the steel thorn away. After putting the first aid kit on the empty seat on the other side, Zhang Su sat next to the flight attendant with the injured arm. The terrorist also escorted the 2 male passengers who were originally sitting in the business class to the economy class. Perhaps he thought that 3 male passengers in the business class would pose a threat to the 2 accomplices in the cockpit. At this time, Zhang Su also breathed a sigh of relief. Another terrorist was under his limited control. Although they cannot be manipulated like puppets, it is still possible to let them do something according to the psychological hints they give. However, these psychological hints are also limited. If Zhang Su asks them to commit suicide now, it will definitely not succeed, unless they have reached the time when they are determined to live and die. Now that the plane has flown over the land, from the window, you can still see 2+ tornado fighters flying along with a hijacked airliner in the distance. While comforting the flight attendant in his arms, Zhang Su listened carefully to the conversation between the captain and the terrorist in the cockpit. Fortunately, they all speak English, which sounds stress-free. Just now the captain's attempt to land at Hamburg Airport was discovered by terrorists, who threatened the captain to land at Berlin's Tegel Airport as planned. Under the threat of death, the captain resolutely gave up. At the same time, Zhang Su analyzed from the dialogue between the terrorists that there were only 4 of them, and there were no bombs on board. After 2 hours of flight, the Lufthansa Airbus A320 finally landed on the runway of Tegel Airport. Before the window shades were lowered as requested by the terrorists, it could be seen that the police cars and fire engines in the distance were already in full swing, not only ready to rush up at any time, but also to prevent the passenger plane from taking off again. Chapter 420 earned a large bonus. With the landing of the passenger plane, the big stone in Zhang Su's heart also fell to the ground. Now he is not afraid that the whole plane will fall down if he is not careful. The reason why Zhang Su wanted to rescue the injured stewardess just now was to get as close to the cockpit as possible besides pity for her. Time to stop. While comforting the stewardess in his arms along the way, he kept making various plans in his mind. Now that the plane has stopped, it is time for him to act. Although Zhang Su could hold the stewardess on the plane and wait for the German 9th Border Defense Brigade to settle the matter, he didn't want to waste his time here. According to the rules of the rivers and lakes, the next step is the negotiation stage between the German government and the terrorists. Considering that the Japanese-speaking terrorists should have nothing to do with the Germans, adding diplomatic wrangling, this matter obviously cannot be resolved in a short time. More importantly, after he solved this group of terrorists, the German government should give him a large bonus. This kind of thing that can make a lot of money with a few moves is rare at this time. Zhang had let go of his thoughts, thinking about whether to make another vote during the 911. After the plane landed, Zhang Su asked the stewardess in his arms to sit down while paying attention to the sounds in the cockpit. Now the terrorists are raising conditions, and it will be Zhang Su's time to act after their conditions are raised. At this moment, in a specially prepared conference room at Tegel Airport, a group of officials from the German Foreign Ministry and Chinese, Japanese, British and other ambassadors to Germany listened to the voices of terrorists on the radio. The list of passengers on the plane was transmitted from the UK early in the morning, and the 5 permanent members of the United Nations were all caught up. At the same time, there were more than 50 Japanese high school students on board. After listening to the conditions of the terrorists, all the ambassadors present here looked at the Japanese ambassador Hiyayuki Kobayashi with a look of resentment. Your family's Shinrikyo taught the Tokyo subway poison gas incident at home 2 years ago. How can you come to Europe? The hijacking of the passenger plane requires the Japanese government to release the imprisoned leader Shoko Asahara and other high-level leaders in the church. Then the terrorists were relieved when they announced the list of hostages. It turned out that the Japanese high school student tour group on the plane included a large group of second-generation officials and second-generation rich people. Even the Prime Minister's niece was on the plane. No wonder these terrorists will find them. At this time, the ambassadors of various countries, excluding Japan, began to plan how to let the terrorists release the passengers from their own countries on the plane first, and then you Japanese can negotiate slowly on your own. Among the officials present, only the Chinese ambassador was very calm. This kind of mentality of not changing his face in front of the collapse of the mountain made the officials of other countries look at him with admiration. Li Hong, China's ambassador to Germany, was at peace at the moment. He was also very nervous at the embassy when he was notified that there were domestic passengers on the hijacked passenger plane, but when he knew that there was only one domestic passenger on board, and that after Zhang Su, who was causing trouble in the UK, he breathed a sigh of relief. As one of the few insiders, Li Hong knew that as long as Zhang Su, his father's comrade in arms by the Weixin Lake back then, was on the plane, and as long as he didn't participate in the hijacking of the plane, there would always be a proper solution to the matter. After the ambassadors of other countries put forward their suggestions, Li Hong said to the German Foreign Minister, Dr. Laitman, if the passengers on the plane of our country solve this problem, your government should not be stingy to them reward. Everyone present took his words as a joke to ease the atmosphere, so the German foreign minister, who likes to be called a doctor, said, if the passenger from your country can properly solve this matter, then our government will give him a reward. 5 million marks. Since the other party is willing to ease the atmosphere, then I can follow his words. The Chinese passenger on the plane can't be Jackie Chan pretending to be, who can't brag, Dr. Letterman thought. At this time, the ambassadors of other countries also expressed the same mentality, saying that as long as the passengers in your country can ensure the safety of their own passengers, hundreds of thousands or millions will not be a problem, and they will definitely not be stingy with that little money. With a high bonus of 1,000 million US dollars, problems that can be solved with money are not problems. At this time, the second contact between the terrorists and the German government began. They just discovered some not-so-top-rich second generations and descendants of some celebrities among the Japanese passengers. Xiaolin Pingzi nervously listened to the voice from the radio, hoping that no more big fish would be discovered. If these second generations had a mistake, he could only buy an Atone automatic laparotomy machine to apologize up. On the radio, the terrorists said in Japanese, in addition to the above-mentioned officials and children of the consortium, we also found the son of a famous mystery novelist, Kudo, a first-year student at Teton High School. Then the radio fell silent. The officials in the office fell into sudden silence, and the Japanese translator next to the radio didn't know how to translate the last The Japanese probably didn't name it like that. The next moment, everyone in the office panicked and asked the German side to figure out what was going on. At the same time, in the cockpit of the passenger plane, the prefect and the deputy prefect looked at the young Asian man holding two bloody heads in horror. Zhang Su, who had cast a confusion spell on himself just now, quietly sneaked into the cockpit, while one of the two terrorists was talking with a list and the other was watching the captain and them. He grabbed a person's head with one hand, then slammed the two heads together. There is not much space in the cockpit. This is the most convenient way that Zhang Su thought of to deal with the two of them at once without using magic. If he couldn't deal with the two terrorists all at once, he would use magic to make up for it. Zhang Su threw the two terrorists whose skulls had been crushed to the ground, and then said to the captain and the others, I don't know if they're dead, but you should tie them up first. An NBSP, after Zhang Su finished speaking, he turned and left the cockpit, and then he said to the flight attendants in the business class, after I have dealt with the other two terrorists, you immediately arrange for the passengers to evacuate the plane. The four stewardesses nodded in agreement when they saw that Zhang Su had dealt with the two terrorists in the cockpit at once. Next, Mr. Zhang will go to the economy class to start his performance. The two terrorists whose thinking had been influenced by him before were controlling the passengers in the economy class. When Zhang Su lifted the curtain between the business class and the economy class on which he had applied a soundproofing spell, he saw the short terrorist walking towards him from the middle of the cabin, only 2 or 3 meters away from him. Zhang Su, who had already quietly put on an armor technique specialized in physical defense, rushed over with a stride, but the terrorist's movement was half a beat slow, and when Zhang Su was about to get in front of him, he raised the steel in his hand prick. Zhang Su used the moving, blocking and hammering in Taijikwan, pushed aside the steel thorns stabbed by the opposite side with his left hand, and accurately hit the opponent's eyes with a punch with his right hand, and then used the elbow-bumping knee of military boxing to solve the problem the other side. It took less than 3 seconds from appearance to the end to solve the terrorist. The passengers in the seats were stunned for a few seconds before they started to scream in panic. At this time, the fat terrorist also came to his senses, waving the steel thorn in his hand and rushed towards Zhang Su, but was knocked down by Zhang Su's side attack and throat thrust the next moment. Seeing that Zhang Su had eliminated all the terrorists in a short period of time, the flight attendants in the business class immediately rushed into the economy class to open the escape door to let the passengers leave the plane. At this moment, a girl's scream came from the middle of the cabin, making the whole cabin suddenly quiet. Zhang Su, who had been guarding against a fifth or even the sixth terrorist, sighed deeply. It's a pity that he was 7 feet away. I saw that the female tour guide who was sitting next to him took a palm-sized knife that I didn't know where she got, and held Yui Ishihara, who was sitting on the other side of him, and shouted in English and Japanese for all passengers to do it. Okay, and let Zhang Su put his head in his hands. Zhang Su sighed and asked, Student Shi Yuan, you are also their accomplice, right? The frightened Ishihara Yui ignored the knife on her neck and kept shaking her head, causing the knife to cut a small hole in her neck, and the donated blood immediately flowed down. Don't play tricks and immediately put your hands on your head, the beautiful tour guide shouted at Zhang Su angrily. In the eyes of everyone on the plane, Zhang Su raised his hands and in the next second, with a wave of his hands, a pair of scissors from the first aid kit flew out of his right hand, and then stuck between the eyebrows of the beautiful woman opposite. It was quite a test for Zhang Su to cast the 2 spells of petrification spell and precision throwing without a stick and silently in a short period of time, but the result was good. The scissors did not stick in the head of the hostage, but hit the terrorist accurately. Zhang Su immediately rushed over and took away the terrorist's hand holding the knife. It would be funny if she used the knife to cut the hostage's carotid artery when she fell down. At this time, the passengers reacted one after another, and immediately opened the escape door with the flight attendants, and then escaped from the passenger plane immediately. Zhang Su hugged Yui Ishihara and checked if she was injured elsewhere. In this short period of less than 1 minute, all the passengers and flight attendants on board had already escaped from the passenger plane. Zhang Su took Ishihara Yui to the escape door, threw her onto the inflatable slide, and put her head in his hands. I'm a student of Hogwarts, not a terrorist. Zhang Su said to the 2 wizards standing at both ends of the airliner who pointed their wands at him, Do you know English? You are Zhang Su from Hogwarts, the wizard standing behind Zhang Su asked uncertainly. Yes, you know me, Zhang Su replied. What lives in the lake at Hogwarts? The wizard continued. Murloc, Grindylow, and giant squid, etc. Zhang Su replied. Who is the boyfriend of the female player in the Triwizard Tournament? The wizard asked again. It's me, now I'm Delacour's fiancé. Zhang Su replied, Is Victor Krum okay now? You sound like Klinsmann. I remember I asked you to help me. A signed photo of your distant uncle. It really is you, Mr. Zhang. The wizard replied, It's me. I didn't expect to meet you here. Zhang Su put down his hands and turned around, and saw that the other party was indeed the student of Durmstrang whom he had known during the Triwizard Tournament. Klinsmann and another wizard also put away their wands after seeing that Zhang Su was not a terrorist. Why are you here? Zhang Su asked. We were ordered to come here to help solve this hijacking incident. I didn't expect you to be 1 step ahead of us. Klinsmann said with some gloom. As soon as we made an action plan, we discovered that there was a problem on the passenger plane, and then my colleagues and I rushed over. But I didn't expect you to have solved the problem. After discovering that the opponent was a friendly army, the Aurors who came to support the German Ministry of Magic tied up the terrorist lying on the ground and left the plane. Zhang Su also left through the escape door. When he stood up from the inflatable slide, foreigners around the slide surrounded him and shouted to Zhang Su, Kung Fu Kung Fu. Zhang Su dealt with several terrorists neatly in front of their eyes. This is a plot that only appeared in Jackie Chan's movies, so the group of foreigners asked him excitedly, Is this the legendary Kung Fu? Zhang Su looked at this group of big-hearted foreigners helplessly. They didn't look like they were hijacked by terrorists just now. Chapter 421 Pass tea to the bosses. When Zhang Su came to Nurmengard, it was already 2 weeks after the hijacking incident. Fortunately, he didn't set a good time with Gellert Grindelwald. Otherwise he didn't know how to explain to the big guy that he was half a month late. The reason why Zhang Su was late was very simple, because he was being targeted by the German Ministry of Magic. After all, Zhang is a well-known figure in the British magic circle. He has been making troubles in the UK for so many years, and he has even been heard of in the European continent in the past 2 years, so the German Ministry of Magic has to pay attention to his arrival. If he let the German Ministry of Magic know that he came here to find Gellert Grindelwald in Nurmengard, maybe the German Ministry of Magic would treat him as a terrorist. Therefore, Zhang Su's excuse was to travel to Germany to relax before returning to China to take the college entrance examination. Because Zhang Su holds a long-term Schengen visa from France, and the visa expires in April, it makes sense for him to come to Germany, which is also a Schengen country, for a round of fun before the visa expires. Moreover, after an investigation, the German government found that he came to Germany once 2 years ago, and that time he came to Germany to poach a young midfielder. This made the German government and the Ministry of Magic breathe a sigh of relief, as long as he didn't come to cause trouble, but the necessary monitoring is still needed. What if he really wants to make trouble this time? After realizing that he was being followed, Zhang simply played around in Berlin first. In addition to attending a commendation conference organized by the German government, the Brandenburg Gate, Berlin Cathedral, Charlottenburg Palace and other places have left the footprints of Zhang Su and Yui Ishihara, who has been sticking to him after playing for 4 days. Ishihara Yui just sent away the reluctant Ishihara Yui, but when they returned to the hotel, the flight attendant Diane, who had an arm injury on the plane, and the flight attendant Sarah, who had an injured forehead, came to the door after recovering from their injuries. With a German translation, a trip all over Germany followed. It wasn't until the orders from the German Ministry of Magic stopped following him that Zhang Su bid farewell to the two beauties. Nuremberg is located in the mountains east of Nuremberg. Zhang Su came to Berchtesgaden National Park in the name of climbing the Alps. After entering the mountain and confirming that no one was watching, he stepped on a flying sword in the middle of the night and went around the east of Munich for nearly, kilometers before arriving in Nuremberg. After looking for a place to rest in the valley outside until the next morning, Zhang Su came to the gate of Nuremberg. The weather around Nuremberg was very bad, with overcast clouds and no sunlight, which made Nuremberg look very eerie. Walking to the door engraved with the words "for the greater good," Zhang Su politely knocked on the door 3 times, and after no one opened the door, he pushed the door and walked in. You can't see your fingers in Nuremberg, and the cold wind blows from time to time. This place is not a place for people to stay at all. Zhang Su took out a flashlight for lighting, and held a rolling pin in the other hand to deal with the dangers he faced at any time. Zhang Su, who climbed up the stairs, felt that he had come to the stupa of Jisegu Jinguang Temple. The stone steps were covered with thick dust, and the ceiling was covered with spider webs. But he didn't have Tang Sanzing singing "Dark clouds overwhelm the night, the tower bell rings to sweep the tower." As long as the spider webs don't block his way, he just keeps walking up. It seems that there are no other people in Nuremberg, and Zhang Su has not seen any traces of recent human activities along the way. After getting rid of an unknown number of spider webs, Zhang Su finally came to the top floor, which according to Dumbledore was the room where Gellert Grindelwald was imprisoned. Knock on the door, no response, then push the door open. Then Zhang Su looked at the 2 big bald heads in the room with a confused look on his face. Obviously neither of them realized that there was a third person here. The big bald head, who was once magnificent, but became bald and even lost his nose, and at the same time became stronger, is holding a magic wand to threaten the big bald head who was once sitting on the ground, but has become bald and weakened. Sorry to bother you. Zhang Su closed the door, then turned and ran. At this moment, Zhang Su's heart can be said to be in the Berlin Zoo. Although he knew that Grindelwald died under the torture of Voldemort, who was looking for the Elder Wand, he did not expect that this incident was not only a year earlier, but also made him hit. Zhang Su, who ran halfway, made a sudden turn and hid in a room. Immediately afterwards, he took out a lot of equipment from the treasure bag and installed it on himself, whatever amulets and mana power banks could hold, as much as he could. But Voldemort flew down from the window early in the morning and stood in front of the gate to block Zhang Su. After waiting for more than 10 minutes, there was no one at the gate. Voldemort realized that Zhang Su might be hiding in a certain room, so he added a loud voice to himself and said, "Mr. Zhang, I think we can talk." Zhang Su, who was hiding in a dark corner, heaved a sigh of relief. In terms of reputation, Voldemort is still reliable. Since he said he wanted to talk, let's talk. At least his own life will be fine before Tan collapses. Apparition cannot be used in this ghostly place, and the portkey used for running has also been disturbed. Otherwise, even if Voldemort yelled out his throat, Zhang Su would not have appeared. Dandany in Grindelwald's room, Zhang Su served tea to the 2 big men. Then Zhang Su took out another basket of fruit and put it on the table, and said, "This was originally intended to be a gift to Lord Grindelwald, so please feel free to do so." Although Zhang Su said so, the 2 bosses sat there motionless and looked at him, which made him feel a lot of pressure. Especially Grindelwald, sitting there like a stone statue, staring at him expressionlessly, but he also felt that the other party was looking at him like he was studying a guinea pig. Finally, Voldemort, who had communicated with Zhang Su several times, broke the silence. "Why are you here?" Voldemort asked. "I came here at the invitation of His Excellency Grindelwald, and I will be returning to China in a few days." Zhang Su replied. "There is no need to hide anything about this kind of thing. It is a waste to use lies in such insignificant places." And unlike Voldemort in Zhang Su's own impression, who was insane because of too many soul divisions, Voldemort in front of him was more calm and wise. In comparison, the current Voldemort is difficult to deal with. In such cases, be more careful with what you say. Voldemort didn't pursue this further, and he went on, "How about we make another deal?" At this time, Grindelwald was suddenly startled, and then changed back to the state of the ancient well just now. "I need the Elder Wand," said Voldemort. "I can exchange it with other treasures of great value, such as the relics of Rowena Ravenclaw, the founder of Ravenclaw House." This time Grindelwald's reaction was much bigger than before. He started to worry because he didn't know Zhang Su's details, and his eyes when looking at Zhang Su became sharper. For wizards who don't know the details of the Elder Wand, the relics of Rowena Ravenclaw are obviously more attractive. "The magic wand mentioned in the legend of the three brothers," Zhang Su asked, pretending to be surprised. "It's just a legendary thing like Merlin's magic wand, right? Nocturne Alley sold 26 pieces every month. The one used. It's real." Voldemort looked at Grindelwald and said, "This Lord Grindelwald once owned it." Zhang Su thought that Grindelwald would continue to install stone statues, but he shook his head the next moment and said, I haven't seen it, don't talk nonsense." Grindelwald spoke German, which Zhang Su couldn't understand, but he could still tell from his actions that he was denying Sanlian. "Since you know that Lord Grindelwald once owned it, maybe this wand is hidden somewhere here," Zhang Su said. "You're lucky if you can find it here," said Voldemort. "Let's talk about it after I find it. Who knows if this legendary thing has been destroyed hundreds of years ago." Zhang Su pouted and said. Voldemort didn't say anything to Zhang Su's answer, just bowed his head and drank his tea. He made a deal with Zhang Su in front of Grindelwald purely to stimulate the other party, which might bring some unexpected gains. If it happens, Voldemort will not be at a disadvantage. But Voldemort was disappointed in the end, and Grindelwald seemed to realize something, and then continued to remain silent. Chapter 422 Teaching the Bosses. The matter of the Elder Wand can be done slowly, so Voldemort is not in a hurry. He put down the teacup in his hand, and said to Zhang Su and Grindelwald, "You talk, don't pay attention to me." If Zhang Su didn't think he couldn't beat him, he would have turned the table now. Zhang Su couldn't ignore Voldemort, but Grindelwald could. If it wasn't for Zhang Su's sudden intrusion, he would have been killed by Voldemort just now. If you are not afraid of death, then ignore him. "Is Albus okay?" Grindelwald asked Zhang Su, speaking English this time. "It's very bad, he's dying," Zhang Su said honestly. "After all, he's old, his teeth are bad, his appetite is bad, his back is sore and his legs are cramping, he's wheezing a lot when he goes upstairs, he doesn't eat much, and every day there's a lot going on. Don't deny if you change the style of painting, there will be a crow flying over the heads of the two bosses with a string of ellipses." It was Voldemort who reacted first, and then he didn't continue. He thought that because he was here, Zhang Su couldn't tell the truth. And Grindelwald had the same idea, so he listened as if it was the other way around. Neither of them thought that Zhang Su was telling the truth. No longer entangled with Laodang's problem, Grindelwald directly stated the reason why he wanted to find Zhang Su. "How did you manage to rule Muggles?" Zhang Su, he always felt that the other party seemed to have misunderstood something. "When I was young, I dedicated myself to leading a revolution in the wizarding world, overturning the international law of secrecy, and establishing a new global order led by wise and powerful wizards and wizards." Grindelwald continued, "But now that I am here, it means that I have failed God." Then Grindelwald looked at Zhang Su and said seriously, "I want to know why I failed, but the wizards in your country succeeded." "I'm curious too," said Voldemort. Zhang Su scratched his head and realized that he had to give a political lesson again. Grindelwald had such doubts. Zhang Su didn't find it strange. For the same thing, he tried hard but failed. When he saw that others succeeded in his eyes, he would naturally ask why. Equality of human rights, dialogue and consultation, win-win cooperation, exchanges and mutual learning, and sustainable development. He stretched out his fist and raised 5 fingers while talking. This is the idea of a community with a shared future for mankind pursued by the wizards in our country. And at the heart of that idea is equality. Although the two are committed to bringing wizards into the sun, in our opinion, your basic ideas are wrong, and they are very wrong. The two fundamentally did not treat ordinary people and wizards as equals. They believed that wizards were inherently superior to others, and that it was only natural for wizards to rule ordinary people. And we, for thousands of years, have been ruling the world with ordinary people, without saying who rules whom. If ordinary people can assist, start again with a picture. Unlike teaching other wizards before, teaching the two big brothers today still made him feel very nervous. Because these two big guys have 3 views that have been frozen, and they are not like other young wizards who can accept fresh ideas. More importantly, these two bosses have a fierce reputation. So he made preparations early in the morning to run away immediately if he waited for the next disagreement to turn his face. Zhang Su didn't think that Grindelwald would change course and come back out of the rivers and lakes after listening to his lessons. All he needed in his dying years was an answer that could solve the mystery in his heart before he died. You think Muggles are powerful and think they can be equal to us, Voldemort said disdainfully. You know I've killed Muggles a lot. Me too. Zhang Su replied. 2 weeks ago, I killed 5 Muggles with my own hands. Zhang Su, after finishing speaking, the little spell that concealed his murderous aura in the past was released, and his whole painting style suddenly changed, becoming eerie and weird. In the words of martial arts, under Zhang Su's murderous aura, Voldemort and Grindelwald's murderous aura immediately rose. That Voldemort is the #1 demon in the world today, and he was killed in a moment like a huge wave and slapped around, suppressing Zhang Su's aura. Lu Xun, a giant in the rivers and lakes, once said that when a person is in the rivers and lakes, his head can be broken, blood can be shed, and his momentum cannot be lost. Lu Xun won the reputation of Zhao Zhuangshun in the world because of his great momentum like a towering ancient tree. Thousands of blows are still strong, let the wind flow from east to west. Zhang Zumo recalled the life of bloody swords flashing with blood, fighting for his life, slashing the enemy bandits, and dying on the battlefield. His fighting spirit was immediately victorious, and the murderous aura carried a sense of righteousness that came from fighting for national independence and the freedom and happiness of the people. Not only withstood Voldemort's brutal and violent murderous intent, but also faintly restrained it. At this time, Grindelwald, the veteran demon who has lived here for more than, years, sat alone and smiled silently watching the two juniors fighting. Under the combined force of people's aura, they couldn't shake it at all. Dumbledore didn't expel you from Hogwarts, Grindelwald said sarcastically. But I saved at least 150 Muggles. Zhang Su said, I can say without guilt that all the Muggles I killed deserve what they deserve. So have you ever thought that the Muggles you killed also had parents and families of their own? Grindelwald asked a very holy question. The Muggles I rescued didn't buy butterbeer, they also have families. Zhang Su replied. Then Zhang Su stopped entangled in this issue, and returned to the original point. He said, facing wizards, a single Muggle may not be strong. But when the battle rises between the Wizarding Society and the Muggle Society, the gap in the power of the system is reflected. Zhang Su looked at Grindelwald and said to him, Your Excellency Grindelwald, you also participated in the Muggle War more than 50 years ago. How do you think the massacre efficiency of Muggle war weapons was compared with that of wizards? Grindelwald said nothing, just sighed. Then Zhang Su looked at Voldemort and said, Your Excellency the Dark Lord, I'm not a Dark Lord in front of Lord Grindelwald. Voldemort waved his hand and said, completely unable to see that he almost killed Grindelwald just now. Lord Voldemort, Zhang Su continued, 200 years ago, Muggles were helpless against giants. But a year ago, your first batch of giants who landed in England were killed by Muggles within half an hour. The army slaughtered them all. And your werewolves from last year were wiped out by the Muggle army in a matter of minutes. Then Zhang Su continued to throw a blockbuster. In Malfoy Manor, you set up a lot of protective magic, and we destroyed it with the Muggle method. Finally, Zhang Su spread his hands. 50 years ago, Lord Grindelwald's actions were the wizard's last chance to defeat Muggles, but you failed that time. 50 years ago, Muggles ushered in the third technological revolution. Since then, wizards have gradually lost their advantage in combat effectiveness. In the face of thermal imagers and ground surveillance radars, invisibility cloaks and disillusionment spells are useless. Specially made strong electromagnetic disruptors can also disable apparition and apparition. Forgotten Rain has no effect on soldiers wearing 3 defense suits. The electroencephalogram can detect people who have been controlled by the Imperious Curse in the first place. As for Avada Kedavra, it takes a little longer to cast against assault rifle bullets. Finally, Zhang Zuta saw it poorly, took out of the side as facing the enemy and put it on the table, turned the side with the words facing Voldemort, pulled the safety latch and said, "This is a weapon commonly used by Muggles. Are you interested? Shall we try its power, Lord Voldemort?" "No, get out." Chapter 423 Handing Fruit to the Bosses. Decisions on many important matters are often made in an instant, and Zhang Su quickly gave up the idea of risking his own serious injuries to blow up Voldemort into filter. The end result of the devil beating the brave and failing to kill the hero is often that the hero regroups and kills the devil, the wife of the Sand Devil, and spends the money of the devil. The reverse is also true. Harry still has a double yolk egg in his head. Before this matter is resolved, Voldemort can only be physically eliminated through other methods, and Voldemort is a hero again 18 years later. This will affect Zhang Su's life plan. So in the end, the boss should be left to the protagonist to solve. Grindelwald's knowledge is much wider than that of Voldemort, a junior. He also saw the Torrent of Steel in World War II, so he had to admit that Muggles have surpassed wizards by a lot in terms of how to kill. So how did you come up with the idea of building that community of shared future for mankind? Grindelwald took the topic in another direction. Zhang Su drank the tea in the cup in one breath, refilled the tea for himself and the bosses, and said, "There are 3 reasons." Then Zhang Su picked up an apple in the basket in the middle of the table, cut the apple into a rabbit shape, and said, "First of all, the development of wizards and ordinary people is interdependent. We live together in a piece of land, and the living environment of our wizards and ordinary people is intertwined. In the tribal society thousands of years ago, ordinary people needed wizards to resist the attacks of magical creatures, diseases and natural disasters, and wizards needed to be separated from production activities, so he needed the support of ordinary people. This is the relationship between wizards and the most primitive mutual aid relationship of ordinary people. After thousands of years of development, this kind of mutual aid relationship has not only not been interrupted, but has been strengthened even more. Therefore, if any group of wizards and ordinary people wants to achieve development, it must be integrated into a broad and inclusive development system, pursue the concept and policy of open development and inclusive growth, and at the same time integrate the development strategy of the wizard group with that of ordinary people. The development strategies of human groups should be connected with each other so as to achieve common and sustainable development goals. With the development of society, the development opportunities and goals of both wizards and ordinary people are generally consistent and locally critical. No group can develop healthily without this system. This makes the development of the 2 groups of wizards and ordinary people necessarily an interactive, cooperative, win-win and common development. When Zhang Su finished speaking, he put the peeled apple rabbit on the plate made of apple peel, took out a toothpick and put it on the side of the plate, and pushed the plate of apple rabbit to the center of the table. Then he greeted, "This is an American snake fruit bought in Munich. Although it is refrigerated, it tastes good. Try it." "Your Excellency," Grindelwald should have eaten a lot before. "They are right, as long as you are there, there will be no shortage of food," said Voldemort. This is the manifestation of the interdependence between wizards and ordinary people. Zhang Su said while eating a piece of apple, "I don't think there are any wizards engaged in agriculture in the 2 Your Excellency's subordinates. In the whole of Europe, there are no wizards who grow apples. If there are no ordinary people, where will wizards find apples to eat?" "This reason is reasonable," Grindelwald said. After eating a piece of apple, Zhang Su continued, "Secondly, the risks and challenges faced by wizards and ordinary people are interdependent. A series of serious problems such as natural disasters, epidemic diseases and foreign invasions constitute the challenges faced by wizards and ordinary people. The Irish famine between 1845 and 1850 affected the wizards living there, and a large number of wizards immigrated to the Americas. The Black Death in the middle of the 14th century killed nearly 1/3 of the population in Europe, and many wizards died before the antidote was developed. We've had serious lessons when it comes to field invasions." Speaking of this, Zhang Su sighed deeply, and then he continued, "During the 800 years from more than 700 years ago to 10 years ago, the land we live on is full of rivals. From the wizards Zhang Jiao, Zhang Bao and Zhang Liang gathered tens of, people by magic. The uprising started and later became the position of war between the Sima family, a royal wizard family. A number of outstanding wizards participated in this battle. In the magnificent war, they were as bright as the stars in the sky. But this also caused the vitality of these wizard families to be severely damaged, and some once prominent families even perished in the end. So that they could not come up with too much when the foreign tribes invaded later more power to resist the wizards of the alien race. After that disaster, our wizards began to stay away from the political struggles among ordinary people. Except for some wizards, most wizard families chose limited contact with ordinary people to recuperate. Until more than 100 years ago, we to retake that stage at a time of national peril, until now. Having said this, Zhang Su drank the tea in the cup in one gulp. The cross-group and high-linkage characteristics of these risks determine that no group can face these all-round catastrophic challenges alone. In the face of such challenges, no group can live comfortably in an island that thinks it is safe. So both of us need to work together in a responsible spirit, face challenges together, work together to deal with crises, and maintain and promote peace and development. Soviet wizards are just like you. Grindelwald said, they brought us a lot of trouble during the war, otherwise we would have solved Stalin long ago. In the winter of 1941, they also opened several solid ice roads on Lake Ladoga, otherwise Leningrad would have been beaten down. Wilhelm von Leib once asked us to destroy those ice roads, and I lost a lot of people there. Do you know a Soviet wizard named Yuri? Grindelwald asked Zhang Su. Is he bald? Zhang Su asked with some uncertainty. That's right, he was not yet 30 years old when I saw him, and I burned his hair off. Grindelwald said, I remember his imperious curse was very powerful, and he once controlled a row German soldiers attacked his headquarters. Later, he also controlled a division commander, but he was discovered because the orders he issued were too unbelievable. If he hadn't controlled one of my men at the last moment, he would have been arrested at that time, burnt to ashes. Growing up to now with his talent, it is estimated that if the two of you meet him without preparation, you will definitely suffer a big loss. Zhang Su did not expect that 3 years ago, the sorcerer who offered to help him at the price of a bottle of wine had also flirted with his big boss, and even escaped successfully. Voldemort, who had only fought security battles, found that he couldn't get in on this topic, and his small scenes could only embarrass himself in front of the boss. Let's eat a slice of apple. The pineapple in the basket seems to be pretty good too. There are some other fruits I haven't seen in the UK. Why don't you ask Lucius to buy them some other day? What about the third reason? Grindelwald asked after bragging. Zhang Su cleared his throat, and then said, the third reason is that the goals pursued by both parties are intertwined. From a broad and long-term perspective, our goal is to realize the great rejuvenation of the nation. Looking at the details, we wizards and ordinary people have the same goals in agriculture and industry. I think Lucius Malfoy should have mentioned to Lord Voldemort that the Malfoy family once cooperated with my family in the breeding business. At this time Voldemort had the urge to flip the table. You fucking put my ancestor's pet into the pot, and you have the nerve to mention it in front of me. If I had known it was so delicious, I would have given it to you. Why do you raise basilisks? After finding out what kind of economic animals Zhang Su's family was raising, Grindelwald was shocked. The whole body of the basilisk is full of treasures. Zhang Su replied, its skin has strong magical properties, its venom can cure cancer, tumors, cerebral thrombosis and other diseases that both wizards and ordinary people will suffer from. Its nerves it can be used to make the core of the wand. Its meat is low in fat, low in cholesterol, and rich in various amino acids, especially suitable for the elderly. We breed basilisks and achieve a win-win situation for wizards and ordinary people in pharmaceuticals, catering and healthcare. To achieve this goal, in addition to using traditional wizard methods for research, we also use ordinary people's science and technology for research, and have achieved many important results. What about the eyes of the basilisk? Voldemort, who was familiar with the basilisk, realized that Zhang Su's words had missed a very important part. Military secrets. I don't know what to do with those eyes after they were taken away by the army. Zhang Su spread his hands and said. Then he continued, in addition, our country has many research results combining the magic of wizards and the technology of ordinary people. It is the chain of interests formed by these achievements that makes the good relationship between wizards and ordinary people closer. If Lord Grindelwald could help the German army solve the problem of fighting in the Soviet Union in winter, Maybe your plan to use Germany to expand its power and then replace it will be successful. In short, we live together on the same land, and the two sides will inevitably become more and more interdependent and share a common destiny, becoming more and more a community of destiny in which I am in you and you are in me. After finishing this topic, Zhang Su picked up a pineapple in the fruit basket and began to cut it. Then your approach is to use interests to closely link wizards and muggles. Aren't you afraid that the two sides will become hostile because of interests? Grindelwald asked Zhang Su, who was peeling a pineapple. Zhang Su said while peeling a pineapple, just like what I said at the beginning, human rights equality, dialogue and consultation, win-win cooperation, exchanges and mutual learning, and sustainable development. If there are any conflicts, everyone can sit down and talk about it calmly. Everyone is in business. Making money together is the most important thing. As long as money can solve the problem, it's not a problem. As long as the two sides have in-depth and extensive exchanges and eliminate the barriers between the two groups, there is nothing that cannot be discussed. Making money is a long-term thing, and no one will be troubled by money because of a temporary dispute. Voldemort pretended to look at Zhang Su's sliced pineapple with a look of disgust, and then pretended that he reluctantly ate a piece at Zhang Su's kind invitation. Then back to the most critical point. Voldemort asked after eating the pineapple, "How did you manage to prevent wizards and muggles from discriminating against each other?" Grindelwald is clearly interested in this question as well. Because we have no tradition of mutual discrimination at all. For thousands of years, ordinary people have been full of respect and admiration for wizards. They hope that there will be a wizard among themselves or their descendants, and they will not be afraid of wizards. Zhang Su replied, "If a family has a child with wizard talent, then after the child becomes a qualified wizard, their family's economic conditions and social status will be greatly improved. Although wizards are better than ordinary people in terms of strength, they don't discriminate against ordinary people, because they all know that everyone is in a mutually beneficial relationship, and there is no need to do things that damage their identity." In this environment, after thousands of years of development, until now, there are not many wizards and ordinary people who discriminate against each other. So when they become qualified wizards, they celebrate by throwing the levitation charm on the chickens and dogs at home. Voldemort asked. Degree. Zhang Su was stunned for a moment before he realized it. It was the first time he had heard someone explain that one man attains enlightenment and ascends to heaven. Could it be that someone was lazy in cultural class? After talking about the topic, the whole room fell into silence for a while. Zhang Su was a little worried. If Voldemort wanted to ask Grindelwald about the Elder Wand, or even kill him, should he run away or run away? Gradually, the atmosphere between the three became depressed. Just when Zhang Su was about to take a step first, Voldemort stood up and flew out of the window. Looking at the figure of Voldemort getting smaller and smaller until he disappeared in the air, Zhang Su finally breathed a sigh of relief. Such a calm Voldemort with an undisturbed IQ is not easy to deal with, and today he finally passed this level. What happened after Zhang Su appeared today may be just a pastime for him. It seems that he has to find an opportunity to thank him for not beating himself up. Zhang Su looked at Grindelwald, and saw him sitting there in a state of thinking. After feeling Zhang Su looking at him, he waved to Zhang Su to indicate that he could go. Zhang Su breathed a sigh of relief again. Voldemort, the huge threat, was gone. He didn't know what this boss would do. So Zhang Su took out other gifts that he had prepared, walked to the hard bed where Grindelwald slept, and helped him spread a set of duvet and pillows. After finishing his busy work, Zhang Su took his leave and left. 3 days later, Hogwarts. There is no big news in Hogwarts recently. The matter of Zhang Su asking for a long vacation was ignored the next day. During the Easter holiday, the Hogwarts team won. The matter of being overturned by the host at the last moment is no longer mentioned. In the cafeteria during breakfast time, the students chatted about their surroundings while eating breakfast. When today's owl rain came, the students saw 4 exhausted owls pulling a large wooden box and flying into the cafeteria, then flew to the professor's bench, and finally threw the wooden box in Snape's room before. Snape, who was confused, opened the wooden box and found that it was full of fruit, and there was a note besides it. "Please help me deliver this box of fruit to the Dark Lord next time I go to a meeting." Zhang Su Chapter 424 Back to School. In a valley among the Shawanda Mountains in southern Guangxi, there is a large building complex. This is the branch of the affiliated middle school of Zixiantang Men's Vocational College in Guangxi. This is a school that specializes in training the younger generation of alchemists. period. After all, young people sometimes don't know the importance, so in order to prevent the science program groups from collectively dying from overwork and other reasons, the government has set up such schools in sparsely populated places. In the principal's office of the school's office building, Principal Li Jianxi sat behind his desk, looking up and down at Zhang Su, who was standing at attention in front of the desk with sharp eyes like a falcon. Ever since Zhang Su came to the principal's office and declared himself home, Principal Li has been looking at him like this. Zhang Su, who realized that the situation was wrong, immediately stood at attention. Several of Zhang Su's friends are also studying in this school, and he has also heard about the upright and vigorous principal in front of him. He wasn't worried that this was the headmaster trying to put him off, because he didn't care about it at all. Just when Zhang Su started to break out in a cold sweat, Principal Li said in a deep voice, "Zhang Su, please explain why you came half a month later than the agreed report time." Zhang Su said loudly, "Report to the principal, I was hijacked when I returned to China, so I delayed the time." Principal Li sneered and said, "Didn't the hijacking incident be solved by you shortly after the plane landed? The news broadcast was broadcast in the 8th minute. How many ordinary people will never get the same treatment as the first 10 minutes in their entire lives?" Now Zhang Su broke out in a cold sweat. He couldn't watch the news broadcast in Germany. After returning to China, he accompanied Fu Rong for a day and came to the school to report. He hadn't had time to pay attention to the domestic reports on this matter. "I don't think it's because the German people are too enthusiastic, making you happy here and not thinking about leaving?" Principal Li continued to ask. Just when Zhang Su was about to explain his explanation, Principal Li stopped his defense with a big wave of his hand, and said, "The relevant departments have suspended your student status in our school for 6 years and have not seen you. I will tell you the specific reasons. But I asked. But now that you are back, in less than 3 months, I will strictly demand you according to our school's rules and regulations. No problem, right? If there is no problem, you can go to the logistics office to arrange the dormitory first, and then report to the academic affairs office." After Zhang Su left the principal's office, he went to the logistics office on the first floor of the office building to get the dormitory key and meal card, and then reported to the academic affairs office upstairs. When he left the office building, the morning reading class had just ended. In the classroom of class 4, grade, on the 6th floor of the teaching building, there is a walk-in vacancy in the last row near the window, which is where students usually put their sundries. Half a month ago, the head teacher asked everyone to remove the water cups, lunch boxes and other sundries that were placed there. It is said that Zhang Su, who only appeared on the list and had been on leave for 10,000 years, is coming back. According to a classmate in the class who claimed to be the mysterious student Yao Zhe, that student Zhang Su went to study in England many years ago. The curious students waited for half a month and no one showed up, so their minds faded away. It's not bad. It's time to prepare for the second model of the college entrance examination, so how can I have time to care about that mysterious classmate? Just when the students put away their books and were about to take the first exam of the second model, a tall boy appeared at the door of the classroom, stared at the door number for a while, then walked to the back door, entered through the back door and sat down. It's on the 10,000-year sundries. In the next second, the eyes of the entire classroom were focused on Zhang Su. Zhang Su, who just took out a pencil case and put it on the desk, was taken aback for a moment, then stood up and clasped his hands together, and said to the students in the class, "Hello, everyone, I'm Zhang Su. I'm having dinner on the 3rd floor of the cafeteria on Friday. If you don't max out my meal card, you will lose." As a result, Zhang Su almost lost the day during dinner time on weekends. Zhang Su and his classmates came to the 3rd floor of the cafeteria. Unlike the dining windows on the 1st and 2nd floors, this is a restaurant that can provide banquet services. There were more than 40 people in Zhang Su's class including him, and 4 tables were opened that day. After learning that Zhang Su is a rich local tyrant in the past few days of communication, his new classmates didn't save him face and ordered 4 tables of the most expensive herbal meals. When Zhang Su finished paying the bill, there was still enough money left in his meal card for the next day's breakfast, which was just enough to buy a bowl of Two Tails old friend fans. There is no evening self-study on Friday. Many students in the lower grades have gone home, and the students in the senior class basically will not leave school. After a week of the second mode exam, everyone had a rare meal to relax. A group of full-fledged students walked back to the dormitory while listening to Zhang Su bragging. Because he did not receive a systematic middle school education in China, Zhang Su found that he had shortcomings in some areas in practice. Now that Dumbledore gave him this opportunity, he decided to use the less than 3 months to go back to school and make up for these shortcomings as much as possible. On Saturday, Zhang Su, who had applied for extracurricular tutoring, came to the training ground early. At 8:30, a middle-aged man who was not tall and somewhat chubby walked into the training ground, followed by a small self-driving cart. Zhang Su immediately went up to greet him, and said, "Hello, Mr. Su, I'm sorry to trouble you today." Su Jian, the teacher of the formation class, looked at the student standing in front of him with a smile, and said, "You are Zhang Su. You are a good young man. You know that you need to make up lessons and you are self-motivated. Tell me how you have learned your own formation technique first." Zhang Su replied, "During the second mode exam, I found that the theoretical knowledge is basically mastered, but the practical experience is too little. Over the years, I have arranged an exorcism formation and an exorcism formation around an old house, and I have also arranged a large-scale fascination formation with a British teacher. The rest are all finished decorations. Then you arrange all 3 formations first, and let me see how your level is." Teacher Su pointed to the cart full of materials behind him, and said with a smile as before. 15 minutes later, Zhang Su arranged a 5-meter diameter expulsion array in the center of the training ground with pieces of white marble bricks engraved with talismans, and then activated the array. These white marble bricks are standardized teaching aids for students' practice and teachers' lectures. Su Jian walked around the edge of the formation, then stepped into the range of the formation, wandered inside for 2 minutes before coming out. The formations set up during teaching are generally not very powerful, and have limited influence on people, and at the same time, they can make people feel their operation. After Su Jian came out, he said to Zhang Su, "It's okay, you can put out the other 2 formations, and then put out the whirlwind formation that is the final question of this written test." In the next hour or so, Zhang Su arranged the other 3 formations according to the teacher's request. After inspecting these formations, Su Jian said to Zhang Su, who was standing aside, "On paper, you have done a good job, and the layout is very textbook. And you are also a little clever, knowing how to check the teaching aids. Yes, the problematic teaching aids have been dealt with in some necessary ways. Many students just ignore this point, and as a result, the formations arranged are less effective. However, when you set up the formation, you ignored the mutual interference between the formations. Now go to the expulsion formation and feel it well. Is the feeling inside it different from the beginning?" Although this point is not mentioned in the textbook, it is a problem that is often encountered in practical application and in the examination room. Especially in the examination room, there are many students taking the exam at the same time, and there are countless examples of the mutual influence between the formations, which makes the candidates seem to be underperforming. In the following time, Su Jian took Zhang Su into several formations, and explained to him in detail some of the flaws in his arrangement of formations, how to roughly judge the mutual influence between formations, and how to proceed. Adjust accordingly. By 11:30, there were more than 10 pages of notes in Zhang Su's notebook. Now he and Su Jian were standing in the whirlwind formation. The wind of about level 5 was blowing around them, and a few leaves spun round and round in the formation with the wind. "Okay, you can adjust this formation yourself," Su Jian said to Zhang Su. 1 minute later, Su Jian shook his head and said to Zhang Su, who was lying on the ground with a gray head and a gray face, "With your half bucket of water, you still want to learn how others do hot swapping, so you will be bombed. Get up, go to the cafeteria to eat first, and continue in the afternoon." After Zhang Su recovered, he stood up and cleaned off the dust on his body, and followed Su Jian to leave the training ground dejectedly. Chapter 425. After leaving the training ground, Su Jian patted Zhang Su on the shoulder and said to him, "Come on, follow me to the kitchen, I'll treat you to something good. Tell me about your time in England." Zhang Su replied, "Teacher Su, let me invite you." Unexpectedly, Su Jian's face changed, and he said seriously, "You are hanging me on the high voltage line. The school stipulates that the faculty and staff cannot accept any gifts or treats from students, otherwise they will all be expelled. Even if they invite a braised egg." Hearing what Su Jian said, Zhang Su gave up the idea of entertaining guests. Since unexpected situations such as explosions, big explosions, and violent explosions often occur on the training ground, it is a little far away from the main building complex of the school. On the way from the training ground to the cafeteria, we passed a large farmland, and the straight ridges divided the field into neat squares like a chessboard. It is the turn of late spring and early summer, and the plants planted in the farmland are in a period of vigorous growth. Looking into the field from the road that is much higher than the farmland, colorful plants are distributed in small farmlands, like a bunch of pixels of different colors squeezed together. When he reached the edge of the field, Su Jian stopped, looked in the direction of the farmland, and said to Zhang Su, "Zhang Su, why don't you pick something to make cold salad?" Zhang Su looked at the farmland for a while, then said to Su Jian with a he face, "Mr. I don't know what it's going to do to me." Seeing that Zhang Su was not fooled, Su Jian smiled and said to him, "You can do it, you can see the doorway inside." Zhang Su smiled and said nothing. He would never say that when he was a child back home, he wanted to run into the medicinal field where precious medicinal materials were planted behind the village to look at it strangely, but after the defensive formation at the edge of the field was activated, it was tied up by the inconspicuous weeds on the ridge. It became a dumpling later. When he was ridiculed by a group of elders, he heard that the formation in the field was specially arranged by the teachers of the school. In order to prevent the students from secretly picking something in the field, the school also made the same arrangement. After all, the straight line distance between the two places is less than, kilometers, and some medicinal materials used in the school are purchased from the village. On the next road, Su Jian roughly explained to Zhang Su some of the defensive formations in the field. Not long after, Zhang Su followed Su Jian to the vicinity of the cafeteria, and then Su Jian led Zhang Su to turn a corner and walk towards the back of the cafeteria. "Let's go to the kitchen to find Lao Ke, he has a lot of good things there," Su Jian said. As a result, as soon as the voice fell, there was a sound like a cow barking from the back door of the cafeteria. Immediately, Zhang Su and Su Jian's eyes lit up, and then they glanced at each other, and they both saw the word joy in each other's eyes. The sound should be that. Yes, it must be that one. When the two of them rushed to the door of the kitchen, they saw a group of people surrounding a cage, discussing something cheerfully. After saying hello to a bunch of principals, directors and teachers around him, Zhang Su carefully looked at the things in the cage. It was a snake with thick arms and about 3 meters long. Its body was white and its head was red. The cowlie cry came from its body. And the temperature around the cage was frighteningly high, like standing next to a boiler. But for the people around, such a temperature can be solved with a small spell. "Where did you get this, friend snake?" Su Jian asked. "Boss Zhang from Fuhu village brought it when he came to deliver the medicinal materials just now. They caught it at Fangchangdang the day before yesterday, and then sold it to us," Principal Li Jixi said. "It's so big, it took a lot of effort." Su Jian sighed. The friend snake with red head and white body is not an ordinary snake. It is a kind of strange beast. Its characteristic is that it can generate heat. When it stays somewhere underground for a long time, the heat emitted from its body will evaporate the water in the surrounding soil, causing local drought. When they gather and reproduce in large numbers, they can even cause widespread drought in some places. If they hide near a spring, that spring will become a hot spring. Seriously, it will heat up the surrounding fish. According to records, there was once a nest of snakes that turned all the sweet potatoes under a piece of sweet potato into roasted sweet potatoes. Therefore, it is a pest that is seriously destructive to agriculture and is not on the protection list. In ancient winter, they were often caught and kept as a heater at home, and they were stewed in spring. At this time, a half-white-haired little old man walked out of the cafeteria, holding a wooden box in his hand. When Principal Li saw him coming, he said to him, "Old K, you have to show your skills today and show Zhang Su, who is back from England, a good look." When Lao Ke saw Zhang Su, he quickly put down Zhang Su in his hand, came up and shook hands with Zhang Su enthusiastically, and said, "So you are Boss Xiao Zhang. You are welcome to come to eat every day like last night. Our canteen's year-end awards depend on you Zhang Su. The heat on the friend snake's body is its self-protection measure. When it encounters danger, the heat will burst out, so that predators cannot attack it even if it is killed. The temperature of the residual heat in a short period of time is not low, and the corpse without its own magic protection will even be cooked by its own temperature. This also makes it necessary to solve the problem of heat insulation and fire prevention when people slaughter it. The easiest way to deal with it is to starve the snake for a period of time to empty its stomach, throw it into a pressure cooker with ingredients and a large pot of water, then cover the pot and close it to death. After the friend snake is drowned and cooled down, the bones and gallbladder are removed by methods such as separation of bones and flesh, and a large pot of snake soup is ready. But the friend snake caught today is too big to fit in a normal pressure cooker, so I had to choose another way to eat it. Because the temperature of the snake is too high, if it is handled in the kitchen, the fire alarm may be triggered, so the cafeteria chose to handle it outside. Soon, Zhang Su knew what the principal meant by letting Lao Ke show his hand. Lao Ke walked to the box he brought just now, stretched out his foot and kicked it, and the lid of the box opened, and inside were neatly lined with handles of knives. Zhang Su counted, and there were 36 in total. Then Lao Ke waved his hand, and the lid on the top of the cage that closed the friend snake was lifted. In the next second, a shadow sprang out from the cage, and at the same time, the temperature in the air rose a bit. At this moment, a silver light flashed, and a pointed kitchen knife was accurately inserted into the snake's lower jaw, and the tip of the knife pierced through the snake's head and came out from the back of the head. Then the kitchen knife lifted it into the air, hanging it in the air. Immediately afterwards, another silver flash lit up on the snake's belly, and another kitchen knife cut open its belly without muddling. At this time, several kitchen knives flew over, opening the snake's abdominal cavity, and then the kitchen knife that opened its stomach just now cut off the leaked snake gall, and it happened to fall into a flying saucer. After the other internal organs were disposed of, all the kitchen knives in the box flew up. Except for the one that fixed the snake's head, the other 35 kitchen knives kept flying around the snake like bees around flowers. In less than a minute, the almost 3-meter-long friend snake turned into a steaming slice of meat on a huge plate. Finally, Lao Ke poured a tablespoon of sesame oil with ginger, coriander, chives and pepper on the snake meat slices on the plate, and the aroma burst out like a bomb, filling every corner of Zhang Su's nasal cavity. Principal Li took the steaming plate and greeted everyone around. Go to the box on the 3rd floor. Su Jian patted Zhang Su, who was stunned by Lao Ke's cooking knife skill, and only then did he recover from the shock. Zhang Su, who came back to his senses, followed Su Jian upstairs to grab a meal. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.